Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to both the Traction GG YouTube channel and the RaceRoom YouTube channel for what is another RaceRoom special event. And tonight is the 2 hour of Imola. Multi-class racing, hypercars, GT3s around a tight and twisty, iconic venue in the heart of Italy. My name is John Monroe, and I'm once again joined by Zach Sweeney for tonight's action. And Zach, it's been a busy week on RaceRoom because this isn't the first broadcast we've had. We were covering the Next Gen Cup race earlier in the week, and that certainly threw up a few surprises.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're not sick of me yet, John, to be honest. It's been you've been stuck with me for ages this week. Really looking forward to be back at it, though. I mean, Next Gen was awesome, and thankfully we've got a couple of drivers that joined us for that on the grid today. Most notably, of course, Alessandro Ottaviani, who come across, I think, P4 in the overall standings of that event and was fighting towards the front, and will be looking to do the same around Imola, of course. What is this now, our third special event in terms of the year? We've had Daytona and amongst a couple of others, and as per usual, expecting some carnage, some chaos, some excitement, some strategy, and just a good time overall, to be honest.
Yeah, we've had a few different combinations. We most recently saw Super Tours at Hockenheim. I was joined by Lewis McGlade for that one, and that was a great race. But this one is going to be very different. Hockenheim, of course, big long straights, big overtaking opportunities in mainly front-wheel drive Super Tours. Tonight, it's back to multi-class action. So yes, Imola is a tight and twisty circuit, as we've mentioned. Very difficult to overtake around. Great fun to drive, of course. But having that multi-class element, Zach, for a circuit like this really does add a layer of chaos to the racing. So even though it's difficult to overtake, it's going to be all about that traffic management and taking your opportunities when they come.
100%. Yeah, I've just come off the back of an endurance race myself where traffic management was quite busy. So that's definitely going to be the case around Imola. You've not got a lot of space to negotiate things, and the pace delta between the hypercars and the GT3s, particularly on the straights, is going to be quite big, and you can very easily get caught out by it if you're not sort of careful. And like I say, Imola is a punishing circuit. You know, you get it even slightly wrong and you're going to know about it. You know, anti-cut curbs on the inside of corners, the gravel traps on the outside of it, and walls not too far beyond that either. So, yeah, the drivers have got to have their wits about them, be patient, and particularly in the hypercars, traffic management could very well win or lose you this race.
I'm so glad Imola's kind of come back into the fray as a mainstay across the globe, because I remember where, you know, there used to be a few Formula One races at Imola and it wasn't a very well-known circuit, and then all of a sudden when sim racing boomed, we had Imola appearing in all of the different sims. You know, it's one of the most popular circuits across all the different platforms, which is great to see. So lots of drivers have lots of experience of this circuit, whether they're RaceRoom experts or otherwise. And we do have, of course, a stacked field tonight. There's going to be 12 splits happening all at the same time, over 370 registered drivers, but we are just going to be showing you the action from the top split. So we should be seeing the best, the cream of the crop that RaceRoom has to offer. And of course, if you want to get involved and try and get yourself into a Split 1 special event, you need to be on RaceRoom, taking part in those ranked races, earning more driver ranking and safety ranking, making your way up through the field, and then you too potentially could make your way onto these top split broadcasts. And of course, it's going to be, you know, an incredibly competitive field tonight. We've seen the entry list, lots of familiar names back for more. We saw Alessandro Ottaviani, of course, as you mentioned earlier, but you've also got Mate Mikiewicz returning once again. Hopefully we'll see him on the grid in the Porsche 963. He was certainly there during the practice session, and he'll be looking to take another win after a fantastic display at Daytona.
Yeah, I mean, Daytona is just encapsulating of who Mate Mikiewicz is as a driver. He's able to sort of overcome a lot of challenges, and, you know, as we know, we won't dwell on too much, there were a lot of challenges surrounded by that event. He was able to keep his composure, keep his cool, and, you know, still deliver despite the fact that he had to negotiate strategy, pace, consistency for the 2.4 hours, and then also lap traffic and all those sorts of things. So those skills very easily going to transfer over for Mate Mikiewicz, and just generally throughout any sort of RaceRoom championship that he's done, whether that's the official rank series or private championships that I've commented on him on, he is always at the front. Really, really good with his racecraft, really there with his consistency, and knows the hypercar very, very well, has got experience of the wins thus far in 2026 as well, and that's only going to be helping him go forward. But like we say, we have got a very stacked field in terms of the hypercars, and with the challenges of Imola, anything at any point can go astray. So nothing's a guarantee, but yeah, you're probably looking at Mate Mikiewicz to be towards the top end.
Certainly. We're also going to see maybe more Lamborghinis towards the top than usual as well. There's a big entry of Lambos for today. I wonder whether that's just because of the Italian connection or whether it's because that car is particularly fast around the circuit. I guess time will tell. You did mention the word strategy there, Zach, and of course, being a 2 hour race, we do have to consider strategy. We have seen 2-hour special events before with these two classes, so it's not completely unfamiliar to us, but we're expecting a pit stop around about the middle of the race for the GT3s, and I think it's a little more, up in the air in terms of the LMDhs, but we can expect to see everyone on a pretty similar strategy in terms of how many stops. It's going to be more about tyre choice and who's going to try and run longer on the harder compounds, who's going to go for a softer compound and try and make them last.
If you ever need to talk to anyone about strategy, look to Marvin and Sven Mackenberg. Those two have historically been pretty brave with the strategies that they choose. I remember a couple of years ago at the Daytona 2.4 hour, don't ask me what year it was, but there was a year where they gambled on a one-stop where everyone else was doing a two-stop, and for quite some time it looked like it was actually going to work. They had to really back off in terms of pace, but ultimately, being brothers, they could sort of use each other's slipstream and work together quite well. So up into the point where they both disconnected, it was running very, very nicely indeed. And of course, we've got both of the brothers on the grid tonight, Marvin Mackenberg and Sven Mackenberg, in the BMW and the Audi respectively. So look out for maybe those guys to do something slightly different. There's not a whole lot that you can do in the GTs in terms of variation. It is very much a case of pit around an hour and then go again to the end of the race. But maybe they can offset slightly, do something a little bit different and optimize that strategy. In the hypercar, it might be a little bit less uniform in terms of what people can do because they can't quite make the full hour. But again, I think most people are going to come to a very similar solution. It's then just going to be a case of that minor optimization and actually nailing the strategy that you're on, because it's all well and good having the blueprint. How well you go and actually execute that is something different entirely.
You're absolutely right. It's all about the execution here, and remaining well concentrated at Imola is a challenge as well. It's such a technical circuit. There really is no breathing space. You of course have I wouldn't even call it a pit straight, the pit, section with two corners in it. So even that takes a little bit of concentration, especially with back markers to deal with. But the rest of the lap, it's pretty relentless. You're constantly heading towards the next corner, thinking about everything. So it is a big challenge of a circuit to just remain concentrated on circuit, let alone when you actually come to thinking about pit stop strategies and all the rest. So we now see Lucas Marchand heading into the opening chicane, the Tambrel chicane, on his lap. He has not set a time just yet, so we'll have to see this one as a banker for Lucas. Ottaviani on pole, 128.4. You've got Braun second, 1.3 seconds off in the Lambo, then Prinda third, Doutsenbergen fourth, currently 1.9 off the pace, and Van der Vaart fifth. But of course, lap time still trickling in. It's a 20-minute qualifying session. Your fastest lap will count. So at this stage, it's all about just getting a lap in, getting accustomed to the circuit. Of course, the time will pass very quickly. Before you know it, there'll only be a few minutes left, and track limits around Imola are also very often a challenge for the drivers to try and remain within those white lines. So getting a clean, decent lap in early is a good thing, because then it kind of takes the pressure off and you can just let it loose for the rest of the session.
Exactly that. Yeah, when you go into a run plan, you sort of have an idea. Okay, I'm going to do maybe push cool push or push cool. So whatever your blueprint going into it is, and oftentimes maybe your second or third lap in a run is the quickest one, because the tires have had an opportunity to get up to temperature. You're warmed up in around a circuit, but you don't want to put too much stress on those later laps. You do really want to get, like you say, a nice safety net going in just to alleviate some of the pressure. And it does then allow you to push and find that extra 10th or 2 tenths later on in the day, because once you've got that safety net, you can really force yourself to push very high. If you do fall short of it, you invalidate or you make a mistake, you've got something very, very solid to drop onto the back to. Something that happens all too often is drivers will push way too hard in the early part of the session, trying to be a hero within the first 5 minutes of a qualifying session, then find themselves with 5 minutes left to go with nothing to fall back on and nothing to show it, even if they are one of the quickest on the field. And again, with RaceRoom, for those that don't know, as soon as that timer ticks 0, the session is over. It doesn't matter if you're on the lap of the century. Time management is incredibly important. So yeah, look out for drivers just trying to sort of bed themselves into the session, and then we'll sort of see what they get on. The fortunate news is, of course, it's lone qualifying, so they've not got to worry too much about their track position relative to other people.
You're absolutely right. And it's not just the lap time finishing early, of course, which is something you have to be aware of to make sure you get that lap in before the timer hits 0, which is not the same as all the different sims. RaceRoom doing something a bit different there to keep things moving quickly. But you can also restart your lap if you get it wrong from essentially a couple of corners before the start-finish line. You don't have to do a full out lap, so you can basically just pick up. If you make a mistake, you can hit escape, start your lap again. You only have a 20-second lead in or something. So this gives you a good chance to get many decent laps in. And of course, then comes down to that decision of at what point do you abandon towards the end of the session a bad lap to have another go and try and get a good one in. We're on board now with Frieder Braun in the Lamborghini, but just to quickly run you through the GT3 order at this stage, you've got Manuel Vera on pole position in the BMW, a 138.8. Anything sub 140 around here in a GT3 is phenomenal. So great to see that the searing pace in the GT3 class towards the top of the field. You've got Roche there, second place in the Audi, just about 6/10 off the Spaniard. Then Areco, who we were just looking at before, in the white and red Porsche, currently third on a 139.8. Mackenberg, Roth, Del Rio, and Svensson rounding out your top 7. It's now top 8 because Coughlin has gone up to P4 in the Porsche. So now 1 second off pole as well. 2 Porsches in the top 4. And those times, of course, will continue to tumble, but you can see the whole field currently split by under 3 seconds, and I'm sure that will continue to compress as this session goes on. Frieder Braun, we're on board with, as I say, currently sitting third. There's a bit of a gap at the moment between the top 2 and Frieder in third, so you'll be hoping to improve on that lap time. But it's a Lambo on pole position at the moment. It is Mate Mikiewicz in the golden machine on a 128.1, and of course, Alessandro Ottaviani will be providing some of the sternest competition tonight in that Porsche, because Ottaviani is very well respected, hugely talented driver on the RaceRoom platform specifically. He's talented across multiple platforms, but recently he's really been focusing on RaceRoom, doing a stellar job, and he's been right up there in pretty much every competition. So I think he is going to truly test the mettle of Mikiewicz, who's been so successful in these special events.
100%. I think, again, with what RaceRoom has to offer, it is attracting some huge talent onto the platform. And 2026 especially has been a big year in terms of participation. Daytona and the special events have just been, they've been booming in terms of drivers getting onto the sim. And, RaceRoom, it's not one of the heavy hitters in the world of sim racing, but pound for pound, it is exceptional. And the devs do such a good job. They care so deeply, and they provide such a good, platform, just bottom line, really, for drivers to do, and opportunities to do that. In the years gone by, you've had the Rocket Racing Star Formula 4 Esports Competition UK. You have had the things like DTM Esports. Very recently, we've had the Next Gen Cup. Things offering drivers big prizes, tests in GT4 cars, a real British Formula 4 seat, the Next Gen Cup car, of course, a test in that in the summer as well. These are things that, as a sim racer, you basically almost universally dream about. So having these opportunities for these drivers have attracted people like Ottaviani onto the platform to be showcasing their talent. And obviously with things like DTM Esports right around the corner, I think Ottaviani just trying to spend as much time on the platform as possible to sort of familiarize himself with that if he is entered in it a bit later on in the next coming months. Of course, last couple of laps, about 12 minutes left to go. So sort of at the midway point of that session, we're starting to piece together as to who's going to be where. Very close between Mikiewicz and Ottaviani, though. I'm expecting that gap to be less than 1.7 tenths by the end of the session.
Frieder Braun did find improvements on that previous lap, so now goes with an 8 tenths, but it's still 8 tenths, and that was a decent improvement. So I'm still thinking, looking at this, we're probably looking at 2 clear favourites for this one in the top class. There are still some fast drivers still to set lap times, of course. We've got Renoun as well, the Finn in the Porsche, who's not set a lap time yet, but there are plenty of top-level talent in that field. We've seen likes of Artur Gra towards the front before as well. Marchand always up there. Rebello in that class too. So plenty of talent in the top class, and I'm sure they'll be looking to close that gap. But Mikiewicz and Ottaviani at the moment in a different league. Of course, such a big transition for any of those drivers taking part in the Next Gen Cup race earlier in the week. It was going from an electric Mini Cooper, essentially, around Oschersleben to a hypercar around Imola. It's a very big transition in terms of driving style, so that's going to be interesting to see how they adapt. Jack Barton, I believe, was one of those drivers. He's coming towards the line now in the Mercedes to start a lap, it looks like. So Zach, do you want to talk us through a bit of a lap of Imola here as Jack Barton heads towards Tamburello? In fact, I think he might have bailed on that lap, so we're now going to jump to Ribbon Alex instead.
Stay right on board with the BMW, which currently has the pole time, so no excuse for the German. Towards turn number 1, of course, a slight kink, so completely flat out. Then towards the Tamburello chicane, want to be all the way on the right-hand side of the circuit. In fact, we'll jump back to the Porsche, which again, running within a second of pole position is the Dane. And, well, we've got 3 different manufacturers inside the top 3, all 3 of them with different engine placements as well, with the front, rear, and mid-engine of the front 3. There is Ribbon Alex. We jumped on board with him momentarily. He's now made his way through the Villeneuve chicane and now making his way towards the hairpin at Tosa. You've got to carry as much speed as you possibly can through the chicane, bring it back over to the right, late apex, because it's an uphill drive towards the double left-hander at the top of the hill.
Yeah, Piratella, tricky corner, slightly off camber, all about your line here on entry and just carrying the speed. Very, very easy to wash out wide on exit. But looks like Ruben Alex is actually not quite taken enough of the wideness offered to him on the exit. Heading now towards Aqua Minerale, get up on that inside curb. Very difficult braking zone. Trail braking, you're turning as you're braking, you're trying not to run wide, and you're trying to get the car stopped before you launch it up the hill and out of Aqua Minerale. A quick run now down towards the chicane at Variante Alta, over the big sausage curb, over the second sausage curb as well. Again, don't run too wide on exit. You want to watch out for track limits there. And at this point, if you're on a good lap, you're just praying you get it stopped on that downhill run towards Rivazza. So you come around this right-hander. As soon as you straighten up, hard on the brakes in the BMW, ABS kicking in, of course. You get it turned in. If you miss that apex, you are going to run wide. And then it's a very, very frustrating run towards the last corner. You always think you're losing time for some reason at the Rivazza, although this time, Ruben Alex is certainly losing time. And you can see how that frustration can mount because it can ruin a fantastic lap. I'd say that double left-hander at Rivazza, Zach, honestly, the bane of my life at times. When I'm going for a hot lap or a qualifying session, it is so frustrating and so difficult to get it right.
Yeah, don't get me started. Even even on not so serious sim titles, it's been a bane of my existence. Has the final two corners at Imola. I mean, it's downhill braking into almost a 90-degree left. It's naturally going to be difficult, and it's placement at the end of a lap. No matter how easy or difficult a corner is, if it's right at the end of a lap and you're in a qualifying session, you're going to have nerves. You're going to be not wanting to completely throw the lap away, and sometimes it just limits how much you can optimize it. And yeah, a slightly shaky leg, not braking as hard or as late as you possibly can, or sometimes pushing too hard towards the end of the lap can very much throw it away. Obviously these guys very, very talented, the very top end of the RaceRoom ranked echelon. These guys know what they're doing. Fabian Roth is currently inside the top 10, leading a quartet of Germans, 10th all the way through to 13th. Currently a couple of attempts would put him well inside the top 10. Let's see if he's able to tip his provisional best lap time as he runs the line, or maybe even starting a lap to try and chase after the likes of Marvin Mackenberg and Sven Mackenberg, the two of those in 5th and 8th position at the moment. I am going to say, though, that lap from Vera looks very solid, 6 tenths clear of the rest of the field.
Certainly does, and we've seen Manuel Vera do it before at the special events. I can't remember if it was Interlagos where he just dominated the GT3 field and ran away from everybody. So we have seen it before from the Spaniard. We may see it again. 6 tenths, as you say, pretty ominous as a gap at this stage in qualifying, but it could just be, one lap from the heavens pulled out of the bag. The quality of the field below is obvious as well. You've got likes of Areco and Roche there in the top 3, the Mackenberg brothers, plenty of fast drivers. So one lap pace doesn't mean everything, but we have seen it in the past that the drivers who are this far ahead of the field do have a good chance of holding on to that during the race. So we'll see what Vera does on this lap. Currently on a 38.7. He's going to cross the line now to complete another one, and he stays for the moment on a 38.7. Meanwhile, the gap has expanded massively for the lead in Hypercar because Mikovic has pulled it out to a huge 1/10 of a second. That gap was below a 10th for most of the session, so clearly now Mikovic is going to absolutely run away with this one.
Race is done. Call it now. I mean, there's no point even being here for the fight for the hypercars. 1/10 of a second is unbelievably huge. Now, I mean, Mikovic and Ottaviani, their flags might be the sideways version of each other's, but they are very close in terms of raw pace. A 1:28.1 and 1:28.2 for Mikovic and Ottaviani. I'm not going to say it's going to be a 2-horse race too early because, strategy and consistency, and maybe Mikovic and Ottaviani, clash horns a little bit around Imola. But the pace that they've got over the rest of the field is scary. Behind that, though, look at the likes of Mitchell Lowe and Daltonberg. They're very, very close on pace. Marchand not a million miles off the back of those guys either. So the fight for the final place on the podium, in terms of purely what we can see from qualifying, looks pretty decent. Again, the fight in 2nd and 3rd in GT3 also looks very, very close indeed. But Vera just, delivering the lap when it needs to be. Still 6 minutes left to go, though, so maybe we can see some last-minute charges from the field.
We certainly can. Just over 1.5 minutes for a lap in GT3, just under 1.5 minutes for a lap in Hypercar. With 6 minutes to go, that means we should see 3 or 4 more lap opportunities. And as I said before, Zach, if you get it wrong at Tamburello, you get it wrong at Villeneuve, you can just restart the lap pretty quickly and efficiently on RaceRoom. So plenty of time for change to occur. Meanwhile, Jack Mitchell-Lowe heads into Variante Alta. He misses that first sausage curb, and of course in these hypercars it's a little bit more tricky to actually ride those curbs. You've got to be leaving a little more room in the bag, but you can make so much difference in lap time if you just basically get lucky through the chicane, honestly. If you send it in and you bounce off the curb in a certain way, you might not want to do it in the race, but in qualifying, it can just get you a couple of tenths if you get the right bounce. Looks like Jack Mitchell wasn't taking too much curb on that particular occasion, but we'll see if he can move up from fourth. The Brit sitting in a strong position at the moment, just over a second off of Mikiewicz on pole. He's going to cross the line, and on this particular lap, he does not improve. We jump back then to Victor Svensson in the BMW as he heads towards Variante Alta. Will he take the big sausage curb? Yes, on the right. Yes, on the left. Beautiful line on the way out. That was lovely stuff from the Swede as he now heads towards Payne Corner, or as it should be called, Rivatsa. Now, heading through this right-hand kink, as you see, you're going to try and hold the car as far to the right as possible, get it slowed down in a straight line, and it's just getting in on that curb, which Victor manages to do well there, using all of the exit curb to riding all the way up those serrated edges, and it's just perfect stuff from Victor Svensson. That was textbook on how to drive the final sector in the BMW. We'll have to see if he can improve his time, though. Currently 9/10 of a second off Manuel Vera on pole position. Will this move him up from fourth? The line suggests it's a good one, but it's no improvement for now. So Svensson starts another one.
Yeah, just frantically taking notes as he went through the final two corners there, to be honest. Yeah, very nicely hooked up there for Svensson, and he needs to improve because look at that fight for fourth. I mean, what is that? 31 thousandths of a second from Svensson back to Sven Mackenberg in the fight for the second row of the grid. And yeah, just on the topic of sort of, the straight lining of a chicane, I can't remember what circuit it was, but there was one for a Super Touring Championship or a Super Touring ranked event last year or the year before where the fastest line in qualifying was to get airtime, four wheels off the circuit, straight lining over some of the curbs, sort of V8 supercar style-esque. And again, it's that risky business, but in a qualifying session as tight as this, those are the margins that you need. And like we say, you can just reset. There's no damage or anything in this qualifying session. If you mess it up, you can just go again. So really trying to optimize it. And to be fair, they're not exactly strapped for time. They had quite a long session. They can afford to really launch it. It's just a case of if you're on a very good lap up into that point, you don't want to risk throwing it away by going for that sort of esports strat, if you like. But equally, you don't want to not do it and then ruin the lap by virtue of not going fast enough. So it really is a sort of a difficult game to play in terms of truly optimizing the lap. And Imola before that is incredibly technical. And then obviously through Alta, it's quite frustrating as a driver to get all the way to that point and completely throw it away. But so far, Vera and Mikiewicz in each respective class have been the ones to be up there. There is Livraghi having a couple of problems through the Villeneuve chicane, but so far keeping it relatively tidy from what we can see. Mate Mikiewicz, though, still at the top end of the session. And right now, of course, we're so far into the session that people are very close to the optimum driving and the optimum pace that they can extract out of the car. And now we're at this stage, it becomes increasingly difficult to go faster beyond this.
Yeah, just a few points of note as we're having a few server issues on screen, so do bear with us and we'll keep you updated on the situation. Matti Renoun just jumped up to 8th in the 963 a few moments ago. We also had Niels Doutsenberg jumping up into 3rd as well, just 7/10 off of our leading two, Mate Mikiewicz and Alessandro Ottaviani. So a good performance there from Niels, and we'll see if he can hang on to that top 3 position as we wait for any potential server issues to settle down here. And in GT3, I did notice the Mackenberg brothers 5th and 6th as it stands, separated by less than a 10th. So that must be a highly competitive family. I'm sure those two would have been very competitive growing up with all the usual things that siblings get up to. Having such a similar skill level at something is just an amazing thing. So they're clearly very, very similarly talented racing drivers, and they're both driving different cars as well today. You've got Marvin in the BMW, and you have Sven in the yellow and white Audi R8. So that's going to be a fun one to watch throughout this race. But as I say, Zach, it looks like we're experiencing some issues. So let's just hope that this settles down and we can get a race underway shortly.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, again, the RaceRoom devs on it, absolutely. As soon as anything like this sort of, arises there, they're straight away there, they're on it. And again, the success of RaceRoom, twisting this into as much of a positive as you can, the success of RaceRoom, booming it, it's getting to the point where, we're having these issues because there are so many people that want to get involved, that want to give it a go, that want to obviously showcase what they can do. 12 total splits taking part in the Imola 2 hour. So that is incredible to see that level of participation on this platform. And of course, here at the highest level, we saw that through that qualifying session, drivers getting as close as they possibly can to the limit and showcasing what they can do. I will say, though, we haven't got the complete pinnacle. We're missing a couple of drivers, the likes of, Lucas Muller, who joined us for the Next Gen Cup and won the Next Gen Cup as well earlier on in the week. He's not joined us. The likes of Moritz Lerner as well, who often is towards the sharp end when he joins us in the world of RaceRoom. A couple of people not attending, and I think, again, by virtue of the fact they're prepping for, some very important events coming up on RaceRoom in the coming months.
Yeah, I think you're right. We don't have necessarily the strength and depth. We've got a few from the very, very top level, and we've got a lot of drivers here who are incredibly quick. I mean, everyone in the top split is incredibly quick, but just maybe not quite the strength and depth. So qualifying is almost over, still around about a minute to go. Looks like things are beginning to stabilize, so we may be able to bring you back the action very shortly, where the race will be starting. So if you just bear with us for a minute, we will keep you updated on that one. But it's probably going to be a 1v1 here for the win in Hypercar, if we're being totally honest, unless something happens. And maybe I'm getting way ahead of myself, but I've seen enough proof from Ozoviani and Mikovic in the past that if they show this kind of pace in qualifying, they're going to be at it for the race. And I really don't know which of the two is the favourite for this one. So I'm very, very excited to see how those two navigate this race and whether they maybe cause problems for each other if they're too similarly matched. Also intrigued to see what happens with strategy. Does one of the drivers go for an undercut here today? Do you try and run long? Do you maybe not change tyres? Do you stick it out? We're going to have to wait and see, because we've seen plenty of variety in strategy decisions in the past with these special events. And we'll just have to, I guess we won't know until the pit stops occur. Meanwhile, looks like we're getting back into the server now. So hopefully in the next minute or so, we should be able to jump back in with the action and maybe even a race start here at Imola. Obviously, lots of GT3s, Zach, in the field today, driver-wise, but also car choice-wise. We've got Porsche 911s, we've got Audis, we've got BMWs, we've got Mercedes. And I guess just seeing that much variety in the machinery out there today just proves, how good a class GT3 is for racing. If you can have this many different manufacturers all competing for a trophy, it's just fantastic to see.
And with no balance of performance either, as we jump straight to the race start for 2 hours.
Yep, so we are back in, and it looks like Doutsenberg actually ended up on the pole, or unfortunately we may have lost a few of our hypercars, in fact, so that is a real shame. But with 2 hours to go, the light goes green, and Doutsenberg leads away. So Braun is then second, Mitchell Love in third, Prinda fourth, with Fraunholtz fifth, and Van der Vaart sixth. So it looks like only 6 of our top class cars have taken the grid. Plenty of GT3s though, with a Reco on pole from Roche. Both Mackenbergs are taking part as well, so that's good to see. But we have lost a few of our top contenders, including Mikovic and Ottaviani for the moment, so that's a real shame, because I was looking forward to seeing a battle between those two. But let's see how these GT3s sort themselves out then. Plenty of flashes of yellow in the background, and it was all seeming to be fairly well under control. Doutsenberg, though, dropping back to third. Meanwhile, it's Jack Mitchell-Lowe who's taken the lead in the 963. Braun second in the Lamborghini, and Doutsenberg's pushed out further wide. Now Fraunholtz goes through as well, so it's been a poor start for the German, who drops to fourth.
Yeah, suboptimal to say the least. He's dropping down even more side by side with the Lamborghini as he tries to find his way through, but Fraunholtz will muscle his way past as they now negotiate towards Acqua Minerale. Nicely done there from Fraunholtz to go through Mitchell-Lowe as well. Not ideal in the slightest for the Porsche of Doutsenberg, and again, with the confusion coming into this race start, probably, a little bit sort of mentally out of it a little bit, not quite got the composure, a little bit frantic, the adrenaline spiking before the start of the race. That I absolutely can almost guarantee will have had an effect on Doutsenberg, who was probably quite confused the fact that he'd wound up on pole position.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was confused when I saw it. Meanwhile, though, he looks back to the inside. It's pretty clumsy from Doutsenberg on the brakes. I mean, it is a difficult car to get stopped, and you could see the lock-up there heading into Rivazza. Very, very easily done. But on lap 1, you want to be a little more cautious than that, potentially. Maybe having to back out of a move, maybe accidentally heading down the inside. Either way, luckily, Fraunholtz managed to hold on. We didn't have a big incident between the two, and all 6 of our hypercars have been able to continue. But now Doutsenberg goes through up into P3 ahead of Fraunholtz. Meanwhile, we look at Marvin Mackenberg in P4 following Roche, who's having a go at Svensson up ahead. They go side by side, and Roche in the Audi on the outside. Svensson on the inside in the BMW takes the position. So that's the Swede up into second place. Great move there on the inside of Tamburello.
Yeah, nicely done indeed. Svensson now up in the second position. The Swede we saw through qualifying actually showcased some good pace. Actually, Tim Roche thinking about a move. I was shocked if he was actually going to commit to that. Running a bit wide, though, Svensson, so that's going to put the BMW under a bit of pressure as Roche tries to go the up and under through Toaster and up towards, of course, Piratella. Behind that, of course, you've got Marvin Mackenberg, who's going to be looking quick and, again, a very experienced driver. He knows how to deal with racecraft. He knows how to play it patient, but down the inside, Tim Roche in a bit of a hurry to find his way through up in a second. The Recco pulling away in the lead. Now 1.9 seconds the advantage for the Porsche.
He's in a GT2 at the moment. 2-second gap to P2, as you say, and there's a massive train behind Svensson. Of course, Svensson and Roche were fighting on that last lap, but Areco's just driven away at the front here. The Dane opening up an over 2-second gap, and we're only on lap 2, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one, but it'll depend if that's just a lap where everything was clean and the drivers behind were battling, or whether that's just pure pace from the Dane, so we'll keep an eye out. Mitchell Lowe still leads in the top class from Braun, Doutzenberger, Fraunholtz, Van der Vaart, and Prinda, and it's 6.6 seconds covering the 6 cars as we head on to lap 2, so you'll already see the field begin to slowly stretch out. But of course, some of the faster drivers will begin to find their pace. We'll get into a battle, and as you can see there, we've got another battle taking place. That is Svensson and Roche yet again for P2. So Roche retaking the position in the Audi. We'll see what happens this time as they head towards Tamburello. This time Roche has the inside line rather than the outside. Svensson's going to have to make it work on the outside, and in fact, he's pulled in behind the German and will consolidate P3 instead. So that is another switch of position. Roche back past Svensson. Fantastic racing here at Imola. Meanwhile, Mackenberg's got the perfect seat to watch this battle unfold, sitting in 4th place and waiting for these two to trip each other up. But of course, they have to be careful because Areco continues to drive away.
Yeah, he does, and the more these guys trip up over each other, that gap is only going to get bigger. Defensive in the background as well. I think that's Martic trying to keep a couple of people at bay. In fact, it's Coughlin in 5th position. Del Rio muscling Fabian Ross to the outside of the circuit in that yellow and black Mercedes. Now a drag race between the pair of them, won by the Mercedes of Roth, who now works his way up in a 6th position, but a send down the inside from Del Rio. Oh my goodness me, what a launch that was from the Audi. It didn't quite pay off in the end, but applying that pressure, and again, Racecraft ripped up and thrown out of the window in GT3. They're keeping it clean, but they're not doing themselves any favour in sort of positioning themselves for the next hour and 55 minutes.
Tell you what, I don't care, Zach. It's good to watch, and it definitely could have gone wrong through Piratella there. It's not a kind of place where you normally see a move like that, just because of the nature of the corner. It's quite high speed, kind of off camber, even though it's still relatively tight. It's not an obvious overtaking opportunity, and it almost became one there, but it also almost became the scene of an accident, so I'm glad everyone managed to make it through unscathed. Ruben Alex on the back of Del Rio still in the Audi, looking very racy. Del Rio runs a bit wide, you can see sparks flying as he goes over the curb, and that opens the door then for Alex, who squeezes through and up into P7, and you can just see how much time loss that's going to cause for Renato Del Rio, because here comes Alex Schmarich through in the Porsche. In fact, no, he pulls back in for the moment, back into the slipstream. Will he have a look down the inside as they head towards Tamburello? Porsche now dives to the inside, but in fact, no, Del Rio seems to have great straight line speed in that Audi, recovered not only to defend himself from Samardich, but also it almost looked like he was re-threatening Alex again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the slipstream seems to be quite strong then, it seems. And again, we've got a very diverse grid of manufacturers, so it's not even the case that one car has a huge advantage over the rest. Del Rio, though, not the best second apex through the Villeneuve chicane, has to park it slightly in the middle of the circuit as Martin does his very best Tony Hayes impression with a steering angle through Toaster there, chopping at it as he turns left about 10 different times, but just trying to poise himself and get the best run as he possibly can up over the crest and towards the double left hand. There is a bit of sideways moment there from Del Rio, well saved, but that's going to ruin the run. Now the Porsche of Smartsport is going to draw alongside him as he run down the hill through Ackermann. Nice move there from the German.
Really nice move. I don't know if Del Rio's got the car set up very aggressively, but he also lost the back on the way into Villeneuve there. We obviously saw him run over the curb and run wide at Rivazza on the previous lap, and then almost had a major crash on the exit of Piratella. So Del Rio either pushing that Audi to its limits, or maybe he's got the car set up a little too aggressively, but he's going to need to settle the tyre temperatures and keep everything calm if he wants to make this race last for 2 hours, because I think with 3 mistakes in 2 laps, he definitely needs to find something, or else he's going to end up in the barrier. Meanwhile, it looks like we've got pressure on the lead here from Frieder Braun as he closes right in on the back of Jack Mitchell-Lowe in the 963. So it's Porsche, Lambo, Porsche, with Doutzenberg still hanging on in P3. We saw the qualifying pace from Doutzenberg, so we know he has the pace of the 2 in front, which does mean that we're going to have an exciting race here today, because we just don't know which of these 3 is going to have the pace. And that's more contact between Svensson and Roche. That looked a little bit nasty. There was a bit of bite there. It might have just been unfortunate contact between the two, but that's the 3rd time in 3 laps those two have gone side by side into Tamburello, and this time it looked like both of them could have come off worse, and we're pretty lucky to see both of them continue on, but it's still Roche at the moment ahead of Svensson.
Yeah, for now. Meanwhile, Areco 4 seconds clear of these guys. No complaints from us there as Roche once again parking it in the middle. This time, though, Svensson going to opt for the outside line, trying to use some of the agility of a very wide, very heavy BMW. Gets the drive off of the corner, though, and once again up towards Piratella. A great fight for second position. It's the Audi of Roche on the inside of the BMW of Svensson, who's once again going to try and launch it around the outside, up over the curb there between the two of them. Brilliant racing as Mackenberg will have a front row seat to all of it, down the hill through the double right through Ackerman and Riley. Finally, Svensson will edge himself in front and up now into second position.
That was awesome. And I tell you, running for those many corners side by side with no incident there proves that the incident we did see heading into Tamburello was clearly not deliberate. It was not someone being overly aggressive, because the two of them are clearly comfortable running side by side, and that is great to see. So Svensson back into second in the BMW, all started around the outside of Tosa. A brilliant move really to muscle his way in there, but Roche did a great job to hang on for as long as he did. We'll just have to see now what's going to happen between these two. Meanwhile, Mackenberg hangs on to fourth, just sitting there still with a great view. He's going to have a big smile on his face, I believe now, the German, watching this in front. He's got Coughlin though for company. That's Ferdinand Coughlin in the red and white Porsche. You can see there in the central mirror, and he's closely followed as well by Fabian Roth in the Mercedes. So look in front though, we've got once again the Audi with great straight line speed. Roche to the outside of Svensson. Can he hang it around the outside into Tamburello? They're going to try side by side. A little bit of muscling. Great move from Roche, and once again these two swap positions. Areco's just driving away at the front, but we are getting an amazing show here for P2, and what a move that was, Zach.
Yeah, brilliant stuff between the two of them. Great respect shown as well. So easily in the world of sim racing nowadays do we see people opening up the steering and giving very little concern to whoever's on the outside. And nice to see that these guys, still with an hour and we're not even 10 minutes into this race, and they're fighting as if it's the last lap for a championship. It's brilliant to see, and again having that respect and not just completely barging each other off the road. We are actually seeing methodical, thought out, strategic racing, albeit an all-out pull at this stage in the race. We are now starting to see the likes of Roth and Alex get reeled in at the back end of this train as well, which is going to make it quite interesting over the next couple of laps. Areco, meanwhile, 5.3 seconds in front, a glorified test session for the Dane, and fighting for his life currently is Tim Roche.
I have a feeling that Audi R8 is like a bullet train in a straight line. It seems like Roche had so much of an overrun there heading into Tamburello around the outside, but also we saw Del Rio in the Audi, doing a defensive acceleration on the straight where he was able to basically undo a move that had been made on him at the start with a bad exit. So clearly the Audi's running well down the straight. The BMW, of course, this time will have the full slipstream, whereas the Audi will have nothing. So we'll see if the BMW in the slipstream can close in on the Audi. This is going to be a good view now as we head on board with Victor Svensson. So just about this point here, you can see it's not really closing in much, but it should be enough for Svensson to have at least a peak heading into Tamburello. Will he look to the outside for another outside move? Of course, the two of them have passed each other now, both on the outside. So it's going to be difficult to know how to defend this one, Zach. I mean, if you're the car in front, normally you try and cover the inside and play it safe that way. But now, it's been proven that the other driver's capable of going around the outside in multiple places on the circuit. You're not going to be sure where to defend. Maybe sit in the middle of the road? I'm not quite sure. Once again, another Audi looking a little bit unstable as well through the Villeneuve chicane there from Roche this time.
Do you know what? I reckon he should just drive fast enough that he doesn't need to defend. Simple as that, surely.
Genius.
I mean, come on, just go faster.
Just do what Areco's doing out in front, yeah.
Exactly. Just drive fast, and then you won't be needing to worry about it. No, in all seriousness though, when you've got this much pressure building behind you, and again you're not overly sure, because you're right. Yeah, the inside is typically a safe bet, but when you've got someone like Svensson who clearly is very, very good at dancing the car on the brakes, because that's a very important skill to have, especially when you're going through long corners. Dancing the car with the brake, especially in racing, which tends to be a slightly more sort of understeery platform. Having that control with the brake, still having that rotation off the racing line, is giving Svensson that advantage. And Roche now I would say he's being very nice in the sense that he's being respectful. He's not forcing Svensson off the road, but that is leaving him susceptible for some amazing and very audacious moves from the BMW. Right now, though, he really needs to be focused on being quick into the corner and quickly coming out of it. He needs to brake late and get the power down. Thankfully, the Audi is quick in a straight line that he hasn't had to worry too much about defending the last couple laps. Right now, though, I think towards the first chicane at Tamburello, he is definitely going to be thinking about it, because that BMW of Svensson is closing the gap.
Something else to consider is that the traffic in about 3 minutes' time with the hypercars coming through on these GT3s is going to throw everything up in the air. So Svensson not making the move that particular lap, just not quite having enough speed, as we talked about, down that straight towards Tamburello to get the overrun on the Audi, but he's certainly keeping the pressure on, is Victor. Meanwhile, Doutsenberg's gone up to P2 ahead of Braun, so that's something we will keep an eye on. 8/10 now behind our leader, Mitchell Lowe. So 2 Porsches lead the way from 2 Lambos and 2 BMWs. Everyone is status quo at the front, 2x2, which is quite neat for the timing tower anyway, and good for the Porsche drivers. But they will, of course, be coming up against GT3 traffic very, very soon, so keep an eye out for that one. Meanwhile, behind these guys, Mackenberg remains in 4th place, the second of our BMWs there. Coughlin, Roth, Alex, Del Rio still hanging on in there. Dropped a couple of seconds now off the back of Roth and Alex. In fact, it's a German train with 4 Germans running from 4th to P7. But Del Rio seems to have settled everything down in terms of his driving, and the Audi is settled into rhythm. There you can see now, though, our leaders in the LMDh hypercar class passing the first of our GT3. So this is when it's going to get really tasty.
It is indeed. I guess the silver lining for GT3s is there are less.
Sorry, Lamborghini off in the background. It was Braun, I think. He got it all wrong into the chicane, passing 2 GT3s, and he's lost at least 4 seconds there, our 3rd place runner. So that has massively opened up the opportunity now for Doutsenberg to run away.
Yeah, we were talking about that chicane during qualifying, weren't we, and how difficult it is. And now he's got 3 GT cars directly in front of him that he now needs to negotiate his way through. So Doutsenberg released to try and catch after Jack Mitchell-Lowe at 1.1 seconds between the pair of them. But yeah, traffic management is going to be vital. Like I say, with only 6 hypercars, the GT3s can sort of breathe a slight sigh of relief. But again, if Mitchell-Lowe and Doutsenberg close the gap relative to each other, then maybe the GT3s have got a little bit more to worry about, with 2 very feisty hypercars trying to send them down the inside. And again, like we were saying before qualifying, not a lot of space to negotiate around Imola. The hypercars really have to be very methodical, lift off before a corner to get the exit coming out of it in order to not drive directly into the back of the GTs, which for the most part we're getting through. Bit of side-to-side contact there. That was a bit mean from the Lamborghini there.
Yeah, you couldn't have timed it better. And yeah, I mean, it was actually a fairly hefty incident through the chicane previously for Braun, so obviously not maximising things. But as you say, they're going to be pretty grateful there's only 6 hypercars and not the 10 or 12 that we had previously. I think that would have created a lot more hassle. So in many ways, it's going to be a slightly easier run than these GT3s expected. But Svensson has gotten through on Roche, so sitting in P2 at the moment. Mackenberg now right on the back of these 2 though, but we just know how much straight line speed that Audi's got. I'd be very curious to see if that's backed up once again when we reach the pit straight. So Tim Roche just needs to keep it neat and tidy through this final sector. He nails Variante Alta. That is a beautiful queue as well. You've got about 5 or 6 cars all at line astern. Hypercar at the back there. I think it might be Fraunholtz coming through in the second of our Lamborghini SC63s. But yeah, Roche is right there with Svensson. Svensson's gone in hot, maybe. Or maybe it's just the BMW very strong under brakes into Ravazza. So this is what we want to pay attention to. Roche now comes out. He's got a decent exit, but so is the BMW. Can the Audi pull alongside before they get to Tamburello? And already you can see the closing speed is bigger than when the Audi was ahead of the BMW. Through goes Fraunholtz, and then to defend. Oh, and they've come together. Svensson into the wall on the left-hand side. That was ugly, and unfortunately tried to cover himself and went a little bit late. Roche was already there. Contact was made, and that fantastic battle comes to a crashing halt with Svensson in the wall.
He did well to keep it out of there, and very well read from the drivers behind. Again, a very big train behind them, all of them negotiating their way through quite cleanly, despite the fact that Svensson was perpendicular to the circuit and crossed it from one end to the other. Again, at this stage in the race, you need to be that aggressive. The Audi's got a bit of an overlap, but he'd have still had the inside by the time they got to Tamburello. There was very little need to risk turning himself over the nose of Roche there, who, again, kept his foot in and, well, he got squeezed. There's not really much more that he could have done. His distance to the white line, I think, stayed relatively the same, so it's hard to pin too much of the blame to Roche there, other than maybe just lifting off the throttle to avoid an incident. But he's not the one that's come off worst off as a result. It's Svensson that's now got to try and charge his way back through. The kind of silver lining to it is it's happened 17 minutes into the race, so he's still got an hour and 43 to see what he can do and carve his way back. At the very least, I'd say back into the top 10.
Yeah, the BMW hopefully doesn't have too much damage there and can begin to make his way through the GT3 field. So still a fun race ahead. Zach, I have to completely agree with you. I think Svensson was desperate to hang on to the position because he thinks he's got more pace than Roche. I think Roche is able to hang on to that position because of the straight line speed, and Svensson saw that as an opportunity. If he could just get through, maybe he could start closing in on Areco and run away from the German. But Roche was already there, and unfortunately, if Roche has set his car up to be fast in a straight line, that's just a choice. If the Audi's faster, it's a car choice. Svensson didn't have the right to squeeze that as far as he did. To be honest, I'm sure it wasn't in any way deliberate. I'm sure Svensson just moved a little bit too late, and it was obviously too late for Roche to back out. But it just, unfortunately, they came together and that was it. So Svensson pays the price. Roche, thankfully for his sake, gets away with it. And Mackenberg almost was looking at suddenly an open door into P2 there, but still remains now in P3. Coughlin and Roth still behind. So this is the train you're now watching. Fabian Roth in the yellow Mercedes at the back there. The white and red Porsche of Coughlin just up ahead. And they are pretty much staying line astern. They're probably doing what we would have thought Roche and Svensson maybe should have done this early in the race, which is just get your head down, put the laps in. If you feel like the car in front isn't holding you up too much, settle into the rhythm, wait until the traffic comes, wait until some mistakes are made, and don't try and force it.
Exactly that. And again, with strategy being as tight as it is, and fuel tank lasting about an hour, if you know you're roughly on the same pace as someone like Roche versus Svensson, for example, if you know that your pace is probably about a tenth or two a lap apart, I wouldn't necessarily see a problem as a driver in sitting behind that driver, saving some fuel, because I know if I get in front, it's almost inconsequential. I'm going to get in front, they're going to stay in the slipstream, they're going to swap places. Very similarly to what we saw on Wednesday with the Next Gen Cup guys, car guys, speak English. You had Moritz Lerner and other drivers using push-to-passes to get past each other, wasting that energy on what was something that was largely inconsequential. If I was, Roche or Svensson, I would actually have been quite happy sitting behind them, bump drafting them along, saving a little bit of fuel. You might not get a full lap or a full 2 laps extra out of a stint, but what it does mean is that you've got some fuel left in reserve in the tank, which is less to put back in by the time you do get to the final stop. And in a field as tight as this, that's going to be tenths or even seconds that it's going to end up being worth it. But ultimately for Roche now, that has been completely extinguished, because he's now up in second and 1.4 seconds clear of the rest of the field. Here comes Svensson though, trying to make his way back through the field and already into P11 for the sweep.
Yeah, you called he would get back into the top 10 probably, and is already up into P11. I think Svensson's car looks okay. Seems to be able to carry the speed. He's obviously already caught up and passed Vandenberg there for P11. So I'm very excited to see how Svensson gets on charging through this field. Next on the list is going to be the second of the Mackenberg brothers, and that of course will be Sven in the Audi. So 1 second at the moment is the gap between the two of those, so we'll see if Svensson can close that one down. Vandenberg having a steady race so far, just ahead of Tapper as well, and Norman Norms in P14 as well, our lone Frenchman in today's field, still not far off the back as well, so everyone has got a fight on their hands or something to chase. No one's fallen too far behind, and it's the same situation that has to be said in Hypercar as well. You've got a battle of the Porsches, battle of the Lamborghinis, and I've just seen a position swap actually for the, I think I did at least, for the BMWs, unless that was something else. But I caught something on the tower there, Zach. I don't know if you saw that by any chance. I don't actually know. I thought I saw something change position. I might be wrong. Maybe I'm just seeing things. So
Potentially. It's been a bit of a weird last sort of half an hour, so maybe we are just going insane. We'll have to wait and see. Riding backwards though from Mackenberg, and he can definitely see Coughlin in his rearview mirror, of course, the Mahindra liveried Porsche. Marvin Mackenberg up into third position, doing significantly better than his brother Sven down in P10, but anything can happen over the next, now 100 minutes of racing through turns 2, 3, and into 4 very, very quickly. Now, as a collective, they could go and catch Tim Roche. They've only got 1.5 seconds to go and catch, which I know is quite a lot, but Mackenberg and Coughlin both have got the pace to go and do that. It just, again, is a case of does Coughlin, does Roth want to play with that memo? Do they actually want to do that, or are they once again going to start parking the bus and throwing down the anchor with an hour and 38 minutes left to go for a fight for P3, which probably won't even settle by the end of the race with them finishing in P3? So I don't know, maybe personally I would try and bump draft at least for a couple laps to assess the situation, because you don't want a repeat of history with what happened with the Recco now leading by 6 seconds to happen to Tim Roche in second.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's down to a decision for each and every driver. I think every driver will know their pace as well. So you will know, for example, if you're being towed along by someone. I feel like when you're following someone and you're just about hanging on and staying in the slipstream, that is a great place to be, because generally speaking, if you're following and you're not able to actually mount a challenge, but you have a slipstream, you're probably going faster than you would be on your own. And not every driver's the same, but I certainly like being the person following. So in that situation, I'm very happy to just sit in and do what I can to hang on. And normally when I do eventually get past in that situation through a mistake or otherwise, I then drop way off the pace as soon as I'm the car in front. You get into a rhythm, don't you? You get into your set of ways with the perception of the corners and where you see the braking markers, where the car in front of you is braking itself, and you just fall into this beautiful flow state. So there's that, and then there's also a situation when you're following someone and you just know how much you're being held up, and that's what we're going to see for the likes of Svensson coming through the field, of course. So he will be desperate to make that move. It depends on your strategy, it depends on who you are as a driver, where you should be in the race, but there are very different ways of going about the same event, basically, depending on your speed. Looking at big movers, we've had Rib and Alex, who we're on board with now, moving up 4 spots in the BMW, so it's been a decent start for the German. We've also had Kirschner moving up 4 spots in the Porsche. Del Rio, though, just taking the position, I believe, back from Alex a moment ago, which we just saw. That Audi, I keep going back to it, slippery, an absolute rocket ship in a straight line, but it seems very scary, unstable, and dangerous through the corners. That's what I'm perceiving so far. So I don't want to call it too early, but wouldn't be surprised to see an Audi having another incident at some point in this race, whether it's Mackenberg, Del Rio, or Roche. Hopefully I'm not cursing it, but even there, you see into Aqua Minerale how much the Audi R8 was struggling to get slowed down. You saw the rear coming round, you're seeing a bit of tyre smoke. It's all over the place. But Del Rio, I mean, credit where credit's due. That car looks like a handful, and he's flying, and he's moving up the order rather than down.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal having a car that's a bit of a handful, but ultimately, you know, sometimes you are going to have a car that is a bit twitchy, and it might just be the case that Del Rio really likes that. I often see it with drivers who are very quick in karting. When they come into sim racing, they do quite like a car that's very on the nose, very twitchy, likes to squirm a little bit. They like to have a little, they like to drive with a little bit of correction because they're smooth enough to make it work. They can get away with a little bit of extra flip angle or whatever it is. So it might just be the case that that's the quickest way round. Like I said earlier, RaceRoom naturally a little bit more of an understeery sim, at least from what I can tell. So maybe sort of inducing a little bit more slip is the fastest way around the corner. Also, on top of that, no balance of performance. So if the Audi naturally is offset slightly in terms of straight line speed to the rest of the field, that's then something you've got to tune out of the car, maybe taking a little bit less rear wing out of it to increase its straight line speed, and very clearly has worked from what we've seen from Roche. The byproduct of that, though, is then a slightly squirmier car through the corners. The Audi has the privilege of the engine placement, maybe sort of counteracting that ever so slightly, but ultimately, yeah, if you're having to run with very little rear wing to offset some of the straight line speed difference, as a result, you can have a slightly twitchier car. But that's just throwing words into the air in terms of what's going on. We don't know the ins and outs of it. That's sort of what I can gather is my best guess. The bottom line is it's working currently because there's Audi second and sixth.
Yeah, exactly, and you're absolutely right. We don't know what these drivers have done with their setup, but seeing more than one Audi flying down the straight does suggest it's more of a car thing than a setup thing. And it's then down to a question, as you mentioned, do you essentially lean into your car's advantage? If your car's fast in a straight line, do you just maximize that and make it an absolute rocket ship, make it very difficult to overtake and just deal with it through the corners? Or do you try and balance it out a little bit? If its strength is the straight line, then you've got a little bit of straight line that you can play with to add some downforce and add some grip through the corners. So it's all about compromise, and it's all about your driving style and what works for you. I certainly, Zach, like a car that's a little bit on the edge. I like a car that oversteers, not understeers. I like a car that's maybe got a lot of rake and is a bit difficult to drive because I just like knowing that I've got that pace underneath me if I need it. Sure, it probably results in a few more crashes than I would care to admit, but I just can't stand it when I'm driving a car that feels understeery and feels slower than it could be, even if it's safe. I'd rather be living life on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't have agreed. I used to quite like a bit of understeer because I knew that I could maybe make that up, with braking and rotating the car with the brakes. Now, getting back into sort of more competitive sim racing this year, I'm completely opposite now. I really do like, similar to you, a car that is on the nose. I really do like having to rotate with the brakes and get the most out of it. Being a little bit more aggressive, still smooth, but neutral steering has become probably my favorite term ever because it's all I do. It's just try and keep the steering wheel as straight as possible, get the car in, get it rotated, slam the throttle down and try and keep the steering wheel as straight as possible. Ultimately, in terms of sim racing, it's the quickest way to go about it in a lot of different cars. And one of the racing series I've been racing in, there's a different car and track combination every single week. And we go from maybe, Formula 4 to MX5s within the span of a week, and a very big adjustment each week in order to do that. So I've had to adjust my driving style a couple of times, but bottom line is I really do like to either have the brake bias set in such a way that changes the characteristics of a car to get to that end goal as much as I can, or just sort of drive in such a way that forces a lot of weight on the front tires, which, yeah, if I was sort of choosing a GT3 car, I'd definitely be looking for something like the Mercedes in terms of having all of the weight on the front and really rotating it with the brakes. I think that would probably be one of the better ways to go about Imola, but very clearly the Porsche, at the very least in the hands of Areco, is the one to be in today.
Turn the car with the pedals, not the steering wheel. That's my
Absolutely.
motto, and I'm with you on that. We did miss a couple of small change of position there because Mackenberg was actually behind Coughlin briefly, but then retook the position. Now Coughlin once again in the Porsche is looking racy. Will he look to the inside into the Tamborel chicane? No, he doesn't this time. So Coughlin backs out of that one and doesn't go for the move. Of course, he's wary because he's got Roth all over his tail as well in the yellow Mercedes, and that Mercedes is looking very racy at the moment as we now head towards Villeneuve. So a great three-way scrap going on for P3. Basically, these three have picked up where Roche and Svensson left off. And speaking of Svensson actually did get past Mackenberg on the previous lap to break into that top 10. So the BMW driver on a charge back through. Next on the list is Kirschner, so we'll keep an eye on that one. But before you know it, if Victor Svensson's got the pace, we could see him move his way all the way back up into this battle for maybe even the top 8. And where did that car come from? That's the Porsche coming through. I don't know if that is Mitchell Lowe or if that's Doutsenberg. I believe that might be Doutsenberg because, Mitchell Lowe, because there comes Doutsenberg in the second of our 963s. Just like that, Zach, it can catch you out so much by surprise. But these hypercars do not hang around, and all of a sudden they're in your mirror, they're flying past you, and they're causing chaos to your racing line. Also, opening up opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I've just come off the back of an endurance race today, and we're racing with being in an LMD3 and racing with P2s, and oftentimes actually what can happen is that, frustratingly, with the hypercars, of course, their biggest pace differential is going to be on the straights, putting their foot down and growing that gap. Mid-corner, apex minimum speed, they actually often do slow down to a very similar speed than the GT3s, which means if you get caught out a little bit by the placement of where a hypercar overtakes you, you almost actually get slowed down slightly by them. Obviously, it's very quickly extinguished by them just flying away on the exit. But when you're in a very intense battle and you're getting overtaken by a hypercar, for that split second or those couple of corners, oh my goodness me, Doutsenberg nearly snapping his way into the side of the Audi that he was lapping. I think that could well have been Roche potentially, but Doutsenberg goes through in his pursuit because he can see the race leader of Jack Michelot directly in front of him. But yeah, at least for the moment as a GT3 car, if you do get held up and you've lost a little bit of momentum relative to the driver you're fighting, it is incredibly frustrating. Equally for a hypercar, you want to dispatch the GT3s as quick as you possibly can, especially if you're in the cockpit of Doutsenberg, who's only got 1.2 seconds to Jack Michelot in front and wants to be getting up.
Here comes the Lamborghinis, making their moves through this train of 3, which will continue to race 3 different manufacturers, 3 different German manufacturers, 3 different German drivers as well. I feel like I'm watching the DTM at the moment. But Ferdinand Coughlin throws that Porsche through Aqua Minerale, looking racy, and he's got a little bit of breathing room at the moment to Roth. Yeah, Mitchell Lowe did have a 1.8, 1.9 second gap to Doutsenberg. That suddenly came down to half a second. That was close. I was looking at the timing tower, and then all of a sudden saw a black Porsche weaving on my right-hand side. That was very sketchy, but Mitchell Lowe just deciding to go for the inside on the right-hand kink before Ravazza rather than go round the outside. And it looks like it's much easier this time for Doutsenberg. So a little bit of time gained there, but more importantly for Mitchell Lowe, he survived what could have been a very, very sketchy moment. And I'm gonna keep on throwing the questions at you, Zach, for your experience with sim racing. But that sort of incident there that we just saw, Mitchell Lowe's leading the race. He's trying to decide whether to go down the inside or the outside of that corner, and it's all about whether the GT3 is going to be predictable and stick to their line, or whether it's going to try and get out of the way and it forces you to change your mind. So as a hypercar driver, you absolutely need to have your wits about you, and you need to try and understand where you think the GT3 is going to go, hope that they're going to be predictable, and make a decision early, or else it can go horribly wrong, as it very nearly did in that situation.
Yeah, and again, the other question is predictable to who? Because oftentimes as a hypercar, you'll put yourself into the shoes of the GT3 and go, yeah, that's what I would do in that situation. But that's a completely arbitrary and subjective thing. The driver in front of you might be doing something completely different and have a completely different idea of what to do. The general rule is, as a GT3 driver, stay predictable, stay on your race line, don't do anything silly. However, if you get caught out slightly, it's down the inside goes the Porsche of Kirchner. That's going to cause a bit of a checkup. Both of them go pirouetting round. Svensson gets tagged in that one as well. Of course, he's being very punchy, very aggressive in carving his way back to the field. A very dodgy rejoin. Good thing we cut away there as Kirchner nearly rejoined straight into the path of the BMW. Yeah, suboptimal to say the least. With that one, Svensson still able to continue in P11, and of course Sven Mackenberg being the beneficiary of all of that, obviously just driving directly behind them. But again, as a GT3, sometimes you try and give the hypercar, you do them a little bit of a favor. If you're on the right-hand side coming out of a corner and they're directly behind you, oftentimes you're not going to bring it back to the racing line for them to go back down the inside. You will just keep it on the right-hand side, as an example. And as a hypercar, it's reading the body language of the car in front, understanding what they're going to do, and then whatever you do decide to do, being fully confident with. The minute that you half-heartedly do something, especially when there's such a big pace delta, is when you lock a brake, is when you fill a gap that isn't necessarily there. You'd rather commit to something 100% and have a little bit of door-to-door contact than 50-50 it and clip their rear, inside wheel or whatever, for example, and send them spinning around. Pivoting off that though, first pit stop of the race, Franhout in from what I believe P3 or 4.
Yeah, it was the top of our... Sorry, was P4, second of our Lamborghinis, and I did see that gap suddenly shrinking to the BMW, and I thought Fernholz was in strife, but no, he was just taking a little break in the pit lane, taking some fuel, possibly some new tyres. It feels very early, of course, for a pit stop, so that is an interesting one. It means that Fernholz is definitely going to be going for a 2-stop, or even, based on that time, you could do 3 stops, but I don't see the need for that, so probably a 2-stop strategy for Fernholz, so we'll have to see how that all plays out later on. Meanwhile, Doutsenberg closing in further on Mitchell Lowe, now got the gap under a second as we now cut to more traffic action. So Roth now losing the lap to the BMW who flies through, but will now, of course, be taking on the next 2 GT3 cars, and that's going to slow those guys up through the Variante Alta. So there's definitely going to be peaks and troughs here. You've got to, as a GT3, just accept that sometimes you are going to lose time in traffic, sometimes you're going to gain it back, or actually you're never going to gain it back. Sometimes others are going to lose time, is what I should say there. So it all kind of evens out in the end, but it can be very, very frustrating as a GT3 dealing with the traffic. Of course, same situation for the LMDhs, but the opposite way around, losing time through having to make their way around and not being held up in that way. It's different dynamic, but it's equally dangerous and equally time consuming for both classes. So we've got to bear that in mind. Sven Mackenberg all over the back now of the Mercedes of Tapper, recovering after the incident there. And Svensson, of course, will have to do all the work again. He managed to get all the way back up into the top 10, was within about 21 seconds of the leader, chasing in on Samardic and Alex and Del Rio, and then unfortunately got into some contact, looped it, and him and Kirchner both paid the price for that one. But through goes Mackenberg with the straight line speed of that Audi, and P9 it now is for Sven. Tappert dropping to 10th in the Merc, but Svensson will of course be coming through again on these two and will have already passed these two, so it's a bit of deja vu for Svensson, who must be getting more and more frustrated by the minute.
Yeah, exactly that. Of course, he is a driver that already is feeling desperate. He had the crash earlier on in the race with Roche. He's now obviously had the tussle with Kirchner. We saw a couple of laps ago, and for him, all it is oh, I'm slowing down. Oh my goodness me, bit of tyre smoke being kicked up there through Tosa from him. And again, it's as a driver, it's okay. I've had a spin. I now want to reset. I want to, fight my way forwards. I want to get the hammer down. I want to show my pace. And then you have another spin, and then it's even more frustrating being added into it. And again, sort of going back to wanting to get onto the back of these guys is dramatic. And Tapper on the back of Sven Mackenberg there was remarkably late on the brakes for the Mercedes. Svensson, maybe a slight reprieve from this frustrating, seeing the two in front of them slow themselves down so much to allow them to get onto the back of it. But bottom line is, I think Svensson is driving with his heart on his sleeve, throwing everything he possibly can at it, because from this point in his head, he's got nothing to lose.
Certainly does, and it's a battle for the race lead as well, because it's 0.2 of a second now between Doutsenberg and Mitchell Lowe. Saw that gap closing in there, got down to 0.2, went back up to 5, now it's at 3, so this is a great battle going on now for the outright lead of the race. The German has closed the gap on the Brit, and we saw how much risk, let's say, Mitchell Lowe was taking in traffic. That's maybe a little bit unfair. We saw one moment where it looked a bit sketchy, let's say, but through the traffic now, the gap has disappeared. Doutsenberg, of course, was our pole sitter for this race after the unfortunate disconnects of some of the other drivers we were expecting to see, the likes of Matti Mikiewicz and Alessandro Ottaviani with those server issues earlier on. But inherited the pole position, did Doutsenberg, so we know he's got great one-lap pace, but struggled on those opening laps, as you called, Zach. Now's the chance for redemption, though. That gap's now down to 110. Doutsenberg in the slipstream is going to pull to the right-hand side. Interesting choice, heading towards Tamburello. So the German's going to try and go around the outside, but late on the brakes from Mitchell Lowe. Hangs on to that position. Gets a little bit squirrely on the exit, though. Doutsenberg's going to go for a cutback, heading towards Villeneuve chicane. Now, it's not going to be enough, though, of an overrun to get down the inside there. He's going to slot in behind, try and force a mistake from Jack, but it's all under control for the moment. You can see just how much Doutsenberg's working away at the wheel through the chicane. And yeah, these two are obviously phenomenal sim racers to be in the top split in the first place, but really getting a chance now to show their stuff at the very top of this special event.
Yeah, exactly that. And Doutsenberg, again, similar to Spencer, not entirely, the same scenario, but fell back in the start, clawed his way back through, and now sees the race lead. And in his mind, he deserves it, right? He showcased that he was the quickest relative to the rest of the field during qualifying, but now maybe starting to get a bit desperate. Some dirty air potentially coming into it, getting it all sorts of wrong through Ackerman and Riley. A small mistake we saw from Mitchell Lowe through there as well. Doutsenberg, at this point, I think the reason he took the outside rather than darting to the inside, he knows that he's still got an hour and 22 plus some pit stops to go in this race. He knows he's got time, he knows he's got the pace, and I think playing this one very, very nicely in the sense that, like I say, utilising the time he's got left. He's not in a rush, knows how good he is, knows that he doesn't need to be sending do or die moves this early in the races. Into the pit lane come Jack Mitchell Lowe. That's probably why Doutsenberg didn't send it so aggressively. He knows maybe he's got a more optimal strategy.
Interesting stuff. So yeah, clear 2-stop for Mitchell Lowe then. 40-minute stints, 3 of them expected. So into the pits comes the Porsche. That's pretty much what we would probably expect with this one. Braun moves up to P2. They're also coming up to lap, I believe. Fernholz, we could see there heading on to that pit straight, so it's getting close in that sense. Victor Svensson, though, to the inside of the Mercedes. That is Tapper, and Svensson not getting the move done on that particular occasion, but will of course try again as they head up towards Piratella. Don't expect to move down the inside of Piratella, although we have seen it once before in this race, so don't be too surprised if we see it. Svensson losing the rear just a little bit. The car clearly set up, as we talked about earlier, to be a little more aggressive, a little more on the nose, but it's still as you were. Tapper nice and well under control in Taquam in a rally, but unfortunately didn't get it quite slowed down well enough. Missed the apex in the second part, and now the Swede is all over the back of the German. Is he going to make a move down the inside into Variante Alte? Nope, backs out of that one pretty late, but still keeping the pressure on. How's the exits? Pretty okay from both of them. Probably ideal from Svensson, though. He'll now have the run as they head towards Ravazza.
Yeah, good stuff here from Svensson to set this move up. Tapper, we know, very good on the brakes. Looking to the left-hand side goes Svensson, gets it down the inside, gets it stopped. Bit of an overlap, though, maybe on the exit, but Tapper not getting the drive off the corner. So Svensson will go through to take P10. Still 80 minutes of this race to go. Svensson into the top 10. Loads of opportunities. Mitchell Lowe will now leave the pit lane to race against time versus Doutsenberg to see who emerges from the first pit stop for the hypercars in the race lead.
Well, I think Doutsenberg's actually in the pits now as well, because Braun is about to take the race lead in the Lamborghini. In fact, that's stabilised now, so they're both probably in the pit lane, I'm going to say. Or Doutsenberg's had a problem. I think both of them are in the pit lane, but we will, of course, have to keep an eye out. And there you are, our race leader now in the pit. So in the next lap, we'll see if the undercut or the overcut has worked. It would be Doutsenberg trying to overcut Mitchell Lowe. So we'll keep an eye on that one as the pit stops continue. Meanwhile, Jens Tappert now being held up with the traffic, so the Lamborghini goes down the inside. That'll be Fernholz, who now, of course, gets closer and closer to the lead, having made his pit stop first. So we'll see how it all shakes up. The BMW's up to P3 and P4. And yeah, Van der Vaart now takes the lead. So most of the field actually have led at some point during this race, it can now be said, as we see a late lunge from Mitchell Lowe, who loses the back. That was a bit too ambitious into Piratella, and that's going to have a huge impact on this race, because our previous race leader, Jack Mitchell Lowe, on the outlap, trying to warm up the tyres, tried to go for an audacious move down the inside of a GT3. I'd say that was just a little bit too late, Zach, and he paid the price.
Yeah, he's driving desperately, as you sort of can understand. Doutsenberg now leaving the pit lane as well, so an unbelievable amount of time loss for Mitchell Lowe there. Doutsenberg emerging comfortably in front, as Mitchell Lowe is only now going through Variante Alte. That is a huge discrepancy. That couldn't have been exclusively from that spin. I know he lost quite a bit of time, but that is a huge delta between the two of them. Doutsenberg emerges in P3, not entirely sure. Maybe Mitchell Lowe took tyres in his stop. That's why he was being very punchy in the opening phase of his stint. Frieder Braun coming into the pit lane as well, and coming out of the pit lane as well. So we'll surely be ahead of Mitchell Lowe. Be close between the pair of them on the exit, but Doutsenberg getting a huge jump on the field there through the first pit stop phase.
Yeah, as you say, can't have just been the spin there. So maybe Mitchell Lowe's taken 4 tyres and Doutsenberg hasn't. We'll just have to keep an eye out on the pace throughout the remainder of these stints. Of course, different tyre compounds available too, so you can run longer on a harder compound, but it might slow you up. And of course, we don't at the moment know what tyres these drivers started on. So potentially a tyre deficit that we weren't aware of playing into the strategy here as well. But Mitchell Lowe now has got Frieder Braun all over the back of him, so just a second between the Porsche and the Lamborghini, as we see Braun, who we're on board with now, dive down the inside of a GT3 again fairly late. They're going to have to be a little bit cautious with this because, of course, and it's easy to say in the commentary box, you know, be a bit careful, don't do anything silly, don't send your car flying down the inside. But when you're in a scrap and you're in a race, sometimes, you know, you just have to make a decision, and making a confident decision to dive down the inside if you've got the room is fine 95% of the time. There might be one time where it doesn't work and you look like an idiot, so you've got to be very careful. You also don't want to just give away loads and loads of time by being extra cautious, because then it also makes it difficult for the GT3 to predict what you're doing too. So there's a lot of complexity to it, a lot of nuance, but unfortunately it looks like Jack Mitchell just got caught out by a clear and obvious error there. We did briefly have a BMW 1-2 with Van der Vaart and Prinda going up from 5th and 6th to lead the race, so they'll take a screenshot of that one for a few laps, but unfortunately they have both now had to make their way to the pit stops, and things will begin to shake out. So Doutsenberg retakes the lead, Fraunholtz up to P2 in the Lamborghini. That was the first of our stoppers, of course, so Fraunholtz doing the massive undercut, let's say, pitting only half an hour into this race. Mitchell Lowe, though, now passing Van der Vaart and Braun chasing him down. So it's been a disaster for the Brit, 30 seconds off the lead. He's now got Braun in the second Lambo all over the back of him, and the two BMWs should come out the pits not far behind either. So a total shake-up in the order for the hypercar class.
Yeah, exactly. Doutsenberg, though, the biggest bit of continuity, to be honest. He's now 24 seconds clear of Fraunholtz in second position. Again, still a long race left to go. Maybe he hasn't taken tyres at this stage, and again, that's going to lose him quite a lot of time when he needs to do that. Fraunholtz and Mitchell Lowe, obviously two that we think took tyres. Mitchell Lowe having the issue, and now is one that is on another comeback drive, and we're seeing quite a few of those through both classes. Doutsenberg initially was the one on the comeback drive. He's now more than redeemed himself for that one. Mitchell Lowe now the other one. And then in GT3, you've got, Svensson, the big name Swede, trying to carve his way back through. Of course, with the GT3 is a bit more of a uniform strategy. They'll come in about, between 12 and 18 minutes time or so. They'll probably come in, refuel, change tyres, go out again, fairly simple, maybe even not even change tyres. They might be able to double stint all the way to the end. A little bit more uniform, so there's less variation in the GT3s, which means pace even more important, and that's pace that Areco has had in his back pocket since, well, qualifying really, and then from lap 1 being able to pull his way all the way in front. Now 5.7 seconds clear of Tim Roche as that gap stabilised since the German got through on Svensson.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think the gap definitely hasn't gotten bigger since Roche has gotten away, so it's not over for sure. Areco could be managing this race very well, saving fuel, saving tyres. Maybe he's pushing flat out, and Roche has got the pace. We've seen the pace of Tim Roche in the past. This is a very, very accomplished driver across multiple different classes. So I'm not saying the race for GT3 is over by any stretch. Areco could make one mistake, one little hold up, a little bit longer in the pits, whatever it might be, and that gap could be down to nothing. So we will have to keep an eye on that, of course. The other fast driver, Svensson's, had a nightmare of a race. Currently sits in P10, 31 seconds off the lead, so he's dropped again a few seconds further away from our race leader. But of course, has been having to make moves in the process and recover from spin, so it makes a lot of sense that he's losing an extra few seconds here and there. We're now watching Renato Del Rio, P6. Second of our Audis. This is the car that's been giving a lot of entertainment in terms of nearly throwing itself off the circuit, but Renato doing a great job to hang on in that position. Still only 18 seconds off the lead, so it's really been a great performance as he now gets passed by the Lamborghini SC63 of Braun or Fraunholtz. I'm not sure which one's which, to be quite honest with you. I wrote down the livery colours here on my notebook, but my handwriting's absolutely shocking. I think Fraunholtz is in the sort of the standard livery, the Lamborghini, or maybe it's Frieder Braun. I don't know. It's all gone to pot. We've lost so many drivers from the practice session. I don't know who's in what car at the moment. But Fraunholtz, I'm interested, Zach, in terms of strategy, because as Roche, I believe, pulls into the pit lane, drops down to 4th position now. I'm intrigued for Fraunholtz's strategy. He was the first to pit in the hypercar class. He pitted half an hour in. Is he going for a 3-stop strategy while everyone else goes for a 2-stopper? Or is he going to do something crazy? I don't think he'll have enough fuel to do it on 2 stops, pulling in half an hour in. I'm just not entirely sure about that.
No, because to do, well, half an hour, he then needs to do 2 back-to-back 45-minute stints,
Yeah, it's too
which,
much, isn't it?
I mean, when did these guys start pitting in? When, about
Oh,
5-ish minutes
sorry.
ago?
There's a BMW off in the background. That's one of the hypercars. I believe that is Van der Vaart from P5. A massive crash through Villeneuve chicane. It is Jasper Van der Vaart. He flew off to the left like Yuki Tsunoda did in qualifying into the tyre barrier. Dramatic scenes here for the Dutchman. Recovers. We'll see if the car's got too much damage. I mean, it was a big hit, so we'll have to wait and see. But not ideal for the leader of our two BMWs. Perinda's also had major issues. It looks like, oh, well, it did say he was 2 laps down, but now it's gone back to saying he's a minute 23 down, so not quite sure what's going on there with Martin Perinda. But yeah, it was looking great for the BMWs for about 1 lap, and unfortunately that was a big shunt there for Jasper. Sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. I mean, just easy to get it wrong, especially in the hypercar where you're carrying so much speed in. You've got to, carry the speed through the left, stay as far over to the left as you can to set up the right. And if you just drop a wheel at any point, or what part of the car loses grip, go over a curb slightly wrong, you snap. And then because the hypercars have got quite a lot of grip, they then grip back up again. So the opposite lock actually turns into normal lock, and you snap back and go the other way. And yeah, of course, for Van der Vaart, that's suboptimal, to say the least. In terms of strategy for Fraunholtz, though, have very little idea as to what's going on there. It's going to be difficult to do it on, well, one more stop from now. Do a bull if he's able to lift and coast and save that fuel, because I don't think Dautzenberg and Mitchell were far off the 45 minutes in. I think it was in the region of about 40 minutes. That is still very difficult to do, not once, but then twice. And again, the question is fair enough, you can do it. The other question is, should you do it? As in the case of, is it actually quicker and worth your time? I mean, for Fraunholtz, it might just be worth a go, bit of fun, practice your fuel saving. But yeah, I mean, to be fair to him, his pace relative to Dautzenberg is pretty stable. So if he is going full push and going for a 3-stop, I think he's just going to lose too much time. And again, if he is just doing going for 3 stints, equally, I think he's losing too much time by fuel saving.
Yeah, I don't see the benefit in the strategy other than doing something different. And I love to see drivers doing something different. And Ferdinand Coughlin gets it all crossed up into Aqua Minerale. Very easily done, but a great save in the Porsche. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think to save what is essentially 3 full laps per stint, because that's what you're going to need to do to extend a stint from 40 minutes to 45 minutes. That's what Fernholz is going to have to do twice in order to get to the end of this race on 2 stops. And at that point, you ask the question, why would you go to that hassle? Why not just make the first stint a bit longer, keep on going, and then add, then you don't have to do 3 laps worth of fuel saving, which is going to cost you a lot of time as the BMW now squeezes down the inside of the Porsche. So it makes no sense to do that. Therefore, I think the most likely thing is for the German is he's doing a 3-stop race. It means that he's doing something different to everyone else. It means he can maybe be more aggressive tire strategy wise if he wants to take soft tires. But again, that's longer pit stops to change the tires. So I'm honestly not sure what the thinking is there. Maybe it's a genius strategy that we don't know about yet. Maybe it's just something a bit different and he's going more aggressive. But you have to say, Zach, I mean, he's gone up from what was a kind of comfortable but far back P4 to P2 in this race for the moment. So, until we see his cash checked, as it were, it's looking good for the moment. But, that'll come back to bite with half an hour to go, I'm sure.
We'll have to wait and see. Again, with the amount of incidents that have been taking place in hypercar, the amount of spins and people getting involved in things, keeping your nose clean will probably do you just a lot of favors. I mean, obviously, the vast majority of the drivers in the hypercar field will be finishing in the top 5, so that's not really too much of a milestone. I think a podium is probably a significant thing to get in a field as tight as this. Obviously, Dautzenberg currently looks the favourite to win the whole thing, but we don't know how offset he is in terms of tyres, whether Mitchell can recover some of that time back on another stop, and how that's going to be. Do you want fresher tyres at the end of the race? Now with Mitchell now on what we think to be fresher tyres as well. So many different variables and things that we don't really know too much about now. Like we said, it's going to be probably about 40 or 50 minutes until we really start to piece together, okay, this is what people were doing, this is what's quicker, this is who needs to catch you, and sort of the pace that they need to run. Still though, in some capacity, it's still a little bit of a brawl in GT3. Kirshner on the back of Van der Berger in the fight for P12. Areco, Mackenberg, Coughlin, now 15 seconds separates Areco to Mackenberg, but behind that, still very, very close. And again, only takes a small mistake, which we have seen in abundance around Imola, to really once again tighten this pack back up. And Nico Areco, as faultless as he has been so far, there's still 69 minutes left to go of this race. Any small mistake between now and then, and that 15-second gap is gone in the blink of his eye.
You're absolutely right, and it's good to see Nico for a little bit because he's had a pretty quiet race out in front in that Porsche, so great to give Nico some airtime, and yeah, just well done. Doing an amazing job so far. Long way to go, as Zach says, but it's been flawless up to this point. We need to talk about Roche though. So Roche came into the pit lane there. I kind of blasé called it as it happened, thinking, oh yeah, there you go, pit stop. But he's only 22 seconds off the lead, which means he didn't stop really at all. It must have been more of like a drive-through situation there from Roche, because he's only lost 15 seconds in the pits. So I'm very, very confused as to what's happened there for Roche. It is a major moment in the race in terms of a fight for the win in GT3, or at least a fight for a clear P2 contender. And I'm just not sure what happened there. So we saw him come out of the pit lane. I thought, okay, yeah, the stop's been done, but then was focused on other things and didn't really kind of stop to think about what actually happened there, because yeah, that's definitely not a fuel stop. It's too early anyway. And meanwhile, Roche sits P7. It was as if it was a drive-through.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe the only other thing I can think of is incident limit, but I'm not sure if that's a DSQ. I don't think incident limit is a DSQ. I think it could well be a drive-through. So if he did get a drive-through penalty, that means he's elapsed a lot of incident points. And we did speak about track limits, which of course is 1 incident point per time you do it. Any contact, of course, he had the contact with Svensson. He got sideways. That again adds to that. I'm not sure on the incident limit for this race. I'm sure someone very kindly could tell us in the interview chat if that could well be the case. And obviously, let us know if you're watching along. Thanks for your company on both the RaceRoom and the Traction YouTube channel. As Tim Roche to the left-hand side will find his way not from 7th but into 6th now, overtaking his countryman of Ruben Alex. If you're watching along, you've got any thoughts, feelings, curious questions, let us know. Drop them down in the chat. Thanks for your engagement thus far. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of people in the YouTube chat probably know a little bit more about the strategy and the and the thoughts behind the drivers than we do in the commentary box.
Yeah, I've been seeing a few comments coming. I've just got to give a bit of a sad shout out to Adrenaluke YT on the Traction stream, who's unfortunately lost connection after spending 7 hours on car setup and practice. So really, really brutal. But we're going to focus on this battle now, because this is, of course, for P3 in the hypercar, which could eventually become P2 when everything is said and done. Frieder Braun on the outside now of Mitchell Lowe, who goes in hot into Tambrell. Great defensive work there from Mitchell Lowe, right on the limit of blocking there, but it was just fully aggressive and managed to get it in. And fair play as well to Frieder for leaving enough room. Great stuff there heading into Tambrello. And yeah, Frieder Braun still on the recovery run, of course. We saw Frieder running off, I think, over a sausage curb into the gravel on the exit of Variante Alta earlier in the race. Before that point, of course, Braun was 2 or 3 seconds off the lead too. So right in there in the mix. Then lost maybe 4 or 5 seconds in that situation. Clearly, Frieder's got pace. Mitchell Lowe's not had a great last 10 or 15 minutes or so in this race, and we have a proper battle on now for what will probably eventually become P2. But also, they're both closing in as we squeeze past one of the Porsches on Fraunholtz, who is beginning to drop back into their clutches. That could also play a part in this battle as well, so we'll have to see if Braun can have another go, and whether Fraunholtz will have anything to do with it too.
Yeah, exactly that. It's going to be quite interesting over the next 65 minutes of racing in the hypercar again. Fair enough, the quantity isn't there, but the quality absolutely is. Daltenberg, Fraunholtz, Mitchell Lowe, and Braun all have an opportunity to do very well in this race if things go their way. There's a very beautiful skyline here at Imola. Frieder Braun gets a good run on the back end of the Porsche of Mitchell Lowe. Will go defensive, does the Brit. The German will then go to the right-hand side, squeeze his way through the kink as they run their way towards the Tambrello chicane. Outside line as they approach some traffic as well, rubbing doors towards the first chicane. Down the inside goes Mitchell Lowe, will retain 3rd position. I have to say, RaceRoom recently had an overhaul in terms of the graphics, shaders and things. It does look very, very nice here at approaching dusk time at Imola.
Yeah, there's still no nighttime running on RaceRoom, but this was one of the recent update features, was a change to the way the sun works and the reflections at this sort of time of day, and it is beautiful to witness. Also beautiful to witness is the front end of that Lamborghini SC63. I do miss seeing that car out there in competition, whether racing in IMSA or the World Endurance Championship. It was a beautiful car. It's a shame the project never really took off or got the momentum that it deserved, and this car was actually added to RaceRoom right at the point where the car was essentially removed from competition. You know, they couldn't compete in the World Endurance Championship without 2 vehicles, and none of the privateers was able to continue the IMSA program either. So a real shame to see this car benched, because I think it's a stunning machine and perfectly suited to this Imola circuit, of course. And at the moment, the drivers Fernholz and Braun are doing it justice. You know, we were hoping to see more Lamborghinis when the field was bigger at the start of this race. Unfortunately, we ended up with 6 cars here, but it's nice to see 2 of each represented, so we've got a fully even spread in terms of manufacturers, which is good to see. We've got another GT3 there. Oh, that's terrible timing. No one's fault there, but Jack Mitchell-Lowe really held up on the exit of the final corner as the BMW pulls into the pit lane. We're not sure who that is pulling in. I'm going to say it's Svensson, actually, Victor Svensson, P11. But fortunately for Jack, he's gotten away with it despite the slight hesitation on exit. Braun not close enough to capitalise as the 2 of these drivers continue to charge down on the Lamborghini.
They do indeed. Trying to get on the back of them. Svensson in the pit lane as well. Will obviously get his fuel tank topped up. Not onto the Jack though, so I'm not sure if he's taking tyres. And then needs to go, well, drive like no one's business for the second half of this race. Frieder Braun still on the back of Mitchell-Lowe. The pair of them, 4 seconds off the back of Frohnholz and Daltonberg still leading. But again, 28 seconds, I would probably say that's around about how long it takes to change tyres. So Daltonberg is looking at this and thinking, yeah, cool, 28.5 seconds. But it's sort of cashing in the gap early as the Mercedes goes quite wide there. Thankfully, allowing the 2 through is a bit of a mistake there from the Porsche of Mitchell-Lowe is going to allow Frieder Braun to draw back alongside through Ackermann and Raleigh. Once again, Frieder Braun getting held up. Mitchell-Lowe, the quicker of the 2, maybe not the most consistent.
Yeah, we've seen that a few times now from Mitchell-Lowe, especially when traffic's involved. It seems to just bring something out in Jack. I don't know if he's lacking a little bit of experience in traffic, or maybe just having one of those days. You know, we've all had them where things go a little bit out of sequence when we get involved with traffic. But it seems like whenever there's a GT3 around, Mitchell-Lowe tends to be more error prone. Frieder Braun's looked relatively consistent since the accident we saw earlier in the race, and continues to charge down on the Brit. Meanwhile, Samardich passes Del Rio, who's in the pits. Mackenberg also in the pits. So we're seeing a lot of our GT3 runners try and go in for the undercut here a couple of minutes before the halfway mark during this 2 hours of Imola race. Shout out to everyone in the YouTube chat that's joining in here. And of course, it's unfortunate that we've had some server issues early on here, and with the number of competitors has dropped. I'm glad we still have a race, of course, and the racing has been phenomenal, as to be said, Zach. We've had a smaller number than we were hoping for, but the battles we've seen in both classes have been sensational despite the difficult nature of this circuit, and it's difficult to know where to look. So credit where credit's due for that one, but obviously it would have been great to see even more cars take to the field. Unfortunately, that's just the way things go sometimes. We've also got a comment from someone who was racing in Split 4, I believe, but also got I think they got rear-ended. So has come to watch Server 1 broadcast instead. So welcome. I'm sorry you got rear-ended. I'm not seeing the comment right now, so I can't give you a named shout out. Oh no, it's Duchess Sky 4072 racing in Split 6, I should say. So sorry to hear your race ended the way it did, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of this beautiful sunset.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again a shame how things have happened today, but ultimately, again, and maybe this is me being a glass half full kind of guy, but I like to see the positive of it. We still get a race. We still get a brilliant race with a lot of the top guys in RaceRoom. And you can understand the frustration here, right? We're not going to be completely looking on that side of positivity. The frustration absolutely is there. And as a driver, you are going to be a little bit, hard done by it, especially like Mate Mikovic and Alessandro Ottaviani. I do think we were robbed of a brilliant battle there, but ultimately the RaceRoom devs, they work incredibly hard to get this done, and after Daytona, they reviewed, they managed to get it up to a stable point. And these things happen. People are only human, and technical problems always happen in any walk of sim racing. So yeah, understandably the drivers are frustrated, but the devs are going to look at it, they're going to review, they're going to make sure the sim can handle it going forwards. And like I said earlier, it's a testament to just how much increase in participation there has been in RaceRoom over the last couple of years, which has historically always been a bit of an underdog. Not been the case in 2026. So many more people jumping onto the sim, taking these opportunities, showcasing how good they can be. And yeah, unfortunately today that's tipped a little bit over what it can handle, but going forward, it's going to be great to see that the passion and the interest is there. Still watching Braun versus Mitchell-Lowe fight it out as Tim Rush, we just saw there, leave the pit lane with now under an hour to go in the Imola 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. We've reached the halfway mark, so we'll do a little bit of a sit rep, shall we? Doutsenberg leads the way, 31 seconds ahead of Frohnholz. Now, both of these drivers on a slightly different pit stop strategy. We believe Doutsenberg didn't take tyres, or at least didn't take 4 tyres, based on the gains from that first pit stop. But Niels Doutsenberg is in the legitimate race lead here, regardless of the fact that his first pit stop was quite short. He still is the man who is technically leading this race when everything's said and done. Frohnholz in P2, came into pit only half an hour into the race. So we believe Fernholz may be on a 3-stop strategy or a massive fuel save 2-stop. So expect Fernholz to drop a little bit further back than P2 by the end of things. But of course, if we see more pace from Ron, he keeps his head clean, he could move up forward through the field. Do expect another pit stop for this Lamborghini relatively soon. You've got Mitchell Lowe, P3 in the Porsche, led the race early on in that black 963. Has been driving really well, lots of pace, led many laps. I think he'll be delighted to have done that in the top split race here during the special event, but unfortunately had a bit of an incident with the back marker there just after the first pit stop, had a spin, lost a bit of time, and has been a little bit flustered, let's say. I don't want to be too harsh on Jack because he is absolutely flying, but just hasn't had the cleanest run since then, and unfortunately therefore sits third, a net P2 we should say, with Braun, who had a spin earlier on, or at least running through the gravel at Variante Alta. Frieder Braun dropping down into further away from the front two in P3, now sitting in P4, but right on the back of previous leader Mitchell Lowe. So Braun's had a good comeback from that point and is looking very racy. Meanwhile, you've got the BMWs 5th and 6th. You've got Van der Vaart in the first of our BMWs, a minute off the lead. There he is. Jasper having a big crash earlier on through the Villeneuve chicane, but seeming to get away with it relatively unscathed, I should say. And then in 6th place, rounding out our 6-car field for the moment, we have Martin Prinda, the Czech driver, in the second of our BMWs. And it's showing sometimes on the timer he's 2 laps down. I think he's 1 lap down, but still running strongly and hoping to pick up more positions with attrition later on. But I don't think Martin, unfortunately, is close enough to fight with the 5 in front on pure pace at this point. He's dropped a little bit too far back, has our driver. The reason I was struggling to see the names, I was looking at the wrong page. Great stuff. All right, moving on to GT3, we have our race leader, Nico Areco, who has driven sensationally so far. 17-second lead in the Porsche and has been pretty much flawless. We haven't seen any mistakes. Of course, we haven't been watching Nico too much because he's been so far out in front, but leading that race on pure pace, doing a fantastic job as we run through the pit stop cycle. Now, GT3s, to do a proper sit rep on GT3s, Zach, I think we should probably wait a few minutes and just make sure that everyone has made their pit stop, because there have been a lot of changes. Having said that, I think it's maybe everyone has made their stops at this point. We've got 57 minutes to go. Roth's back up into P4, so I'm going to say that almost everyone has made their pit stop. So you know what, we will actually do it. We'll do a run through right now. So Areco leading the way, 38 laps into this race. You've got Marvin Mackenberg P2 in the BMW, 17.4 seconds off the back. Marvin's been right in the thick of the racing today, but has kept his nose clean. He's made positions when others have made mistakes and had incidents, and is sitting in a great net second place at the moment. Not far ahead of, however, Ferdinand Coughlin, who has been a thorn in the German side throughout this race. The Porsche driver sitting third, has been following Mackenberg basically for this entire race and continues to do so, as does the man in 4th place, which is, of course, Fabian Roth in the yellow Mercedes. You can now see out the back of the Porsche. So these three have been stuck together like glue the whole time, Mackenberg, Coughlin and Roth. You've then got Alex, who's been having a great race in P5, a little bit up and down at times and a little bit further away from the top 4, as we see a change of position actually, because Coughlin is into the pits and Areco's into the pits too. I'm a bit confused by that, because I thought the pit stops had all sort of cycled their way through, but Areco's in the pits, Coughlin's in the pits. I'm genuinely confused, so I'm going to have to just keep an eye on what's happening there. Is this maybe the first stops for some of these drivers? Roche has made 2 stops, and the timing tower is kind of changing a little bit, so maybe it's just a little bit of inconsistency in the tower, because now it's showing Roche is 51 seconds off the lead. A minute ago he was 15 seconds off, so sorry for the confusion. We should have waited until everything had played out.
That's right, we can always do another one, it's fine. Nico Areco will leave the pit lane, will be P4 as he leaves, but understandably when Marvin Mackenberg, Fabian Roth and Riven Alex all come into the pit lane in the next couple of laps. I have to say I'm really impressed with how long they're stretching this. Those that have already come into the pit lane would have had to, put more fuel back into the car, whereas these guys, they only need to put 54 minutes, or well, even for the top 3, even less than that, back into the pit lane. There's Fabian Roth, 1.1 seconds off the back of Marvin Mackenberg, who will lead this lap if he completes it and doesn't come into the pit lane. Very impressed to see that they've stretched it this long, considering, there's quite a lot of time at Imola where you are full throttle. Also, a lot of stop-start where you are slowing down, then getting the power back on. You are consuming quite a bit of fuel around this circuit, but Maverick Mackenberg, Fabian Roth, Ruben Alex, the best of those to continue on. Vandenberger also as well. Well, now 10 seconds off the back of Recco, whose pace was so good, he's been able to come out in front of people who haven't pitted yet thus far in this race. He has just been on fire. Back at this battle, though, in the LMDh class, it's a Porsche sandwich with some Lamborghini bread either side. Fraunhouse and Braun second and fourth with Jack Flow in between. Those three will be doing battle for second, whereas into the pit lane, Marvin Mackenberg continues on for another lap. Fabian Roth comes in, as does also the BMW of Alex.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't call this a Lamborghini sandwich, because Lewis McGlade would not be speaking to you for months.
Oh, I've learned from the best. I've learned from the best.
I know, I'm very careful these days with it as well, and you've done exactly what I would have done. Yes, the pit stops are now taking place in GT3 for our leaders, so apologies for the confusion there. I thought potentially everyone had pitted, but it looks like there are 3 or 4 drivers still to pit. So that will cycle itself through, and we will retain our positions very, very shortly. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Mackenberg still to pit. But this is a 3-car battle now. We did see, of course, Braun all over the back of Mitchell Lowe previously, and that continues to be the case. However, the two of them have closed in finally on Fraunholtz. I think it might have been a mistake or something for Fraunholtz, because he was actually holding his own pretty well in P2 pace-wise. Still no second stop now for the German, so it's going to be very interesting, Zach, to see what happens in the next 10 minutes for this driver. Will he pull into the pits and prove the 3-stop strategy, or will he try desperately and stretch it out to 2 stops? And I think if he can keep going for another maybe 8 or 9 minutes, there's a good chance he can also find himself on a 2-stop strategy. The 3-car train, though, heads past Fabian Roth, who's now back up into P3 in the Audi, as things have all settled now. And it's like Mitchell Lowe at the moment, who's right on the back of Fraunholtz, looking the most racy here. And of course, Braun's going to have to be careful, because if Mitchell Lowe can get past Fraunholtz quickly, Braun's still going to have to make that move as well. Could be held up. So it's vital that he's right there to pounce in case Jack Mitchell Lowe gets anything wrong here. This is going to be interesting.
It is indeed. I mean, Fraunhouse is in a position where he can really back up the pace a little bit, especially through the infield. He can lift in close, he can slow it down right at the apex and drive off of the corner quite nicely, because of how difficult it is to get round here at Imola, apart from obviously the obvious places around the lap. So Fraunhouse backing everyone up. You say 8 or 9 minutes as if that isn't a really long time in racing. It's going to be tough for him to stretch out that far, but we don't know what fuel he's got on board at the moment. If he can get to 45 minutes, it's doable, because he came in about half an hour into the race. Any less than that, and he's almost inevitably going to be forced to do a splash and dash at the end.
For sure. And we've got another back marker now coming into play. That's the Porsche having to stay out of the way. And you can see it's late on the brakes from Braun. He looked very aggressive in there, but I think it was just maybe a slight misbraking point, or everyone else having to kind of check up because of the Porsche. Thankfully, Braun didn't plough into the back of the Mitchell Lowe 963, and they all got away with it, but that was very, very sketchy for a second, Zach. These cars, of course, do not have anti-lock brakes, so once you get it locked up, if that does happen, you are in big, big trouble. Heading into Tamburello now, the Mercedes gets out the way, so this is just a hypercar train coming through the field now, and it remains pretty solid at the moment. There's similar gaps between all 3 of them, but things are getting incredibly dicey.
Yeah, exactly that. And again, with the hypercars with no ABS around some heavy braking zones, and when you do get a checkup, you've got it suddenly increased brake pressure. You lock up the fronts, that's obviously suboptimal. If you lock up the rears, it's going to send you sideways. Potentially also, for a moment, cut out the engine. When it then comes back into life, you then have a sudden amount of torque to the rear end, and that's ultimately what can cause you to spin. So these guys have got to be quite careful. Jack Mitchell Lowe, though, really driving that car on the knife's edge, sideways, quite often on the exit of corners, really on the limit of grip. And with 50 minutes left to go, as we approach the second pit stops in LMDh, Fraunholtz, you can tell, backing the pace up quite a lot, has lost over the last 20 minutes, I would say about 10 seconds to Daltonberg in front. So really is backing it up and definitely feeling the pressure now that these 3 have bunched themselves back up again. His ideal scenario here is Mitchell Lowe being put under attack by Frieder Braun behind. So those 2 have a bit of a squabble to give him a lap or 2 where he doesn't have to drive this race in his mirrors.
I love this circuit, Zach, honestly. It's such a great track. I know it's not necessarily always the best for overtaking, or it doesn't produce the most overtaking, but we've seen plenty of side-by-side running here today, and in sim racing, this is just a perfect arena for some great motorsport. And you can see now Braun looking once again towards the outside on Mitchell Lowe. Had a bit of an overlap there, but not quite enough to make a move. Just going to start buzzing around in the mirrors, or continue to buzz around in the mirrors. Fraunholtz, I do not want to be looking in Fraunholtz's mirrors right now, which is exactly what we're doing, looking back at these 2, because there's a lot of pace behind him, there's a lot of aggression, and there's Two drivers very much willing to make a move, and there's a mistake from Mitchell Lowe. That's the mistake that Braun was looking for. And down the inside slides the German in the Lamborghini to move up into P3, which will, of course, well, I keep saying, of course, become a net 2. At this rate, Zach, you never know. Fernholz might be able to stretch this one out. He's certainly trying to. But it is P3 now for Braun, who will have his own go on Fernholz. Two Lamborghinis, similar strengths and weaknesses, of course, so it's going to change the dynamic of the battle. Mitchell Lowe will have to regroup and settle himself down. That could have been worse, though. He definitely could have ploughed into the back of the Lambo, could have lost the rear. So, in some ways, lucky to get away with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fernholz, like I say, what he needs to do 2 more laps in order to get to maybe 3. Marvin Mackenberg finally comes into the pit lane. He's really stretched this into the second half of the race. 48 minutes left to go. He's going to have a tremendously shorter pit stop than everyone else. I think he is ultimately still going to lose track position relative to those around him. But what did I say about the Mackenbergs and their fuel stage strategy? Marvin was the one to execute that today. Fernholz, they're like, yeah, obviously Friede Braun goes through up in the 3rd position. Fernholz still backing it up. He goes on for another lap. So right now is on a 42-minute stint at this point. It's getting close to maybe being able to do it, especially if he can keep these two behind. If he can maintain that position up into his stop, he might be in a pretty decent position to go all the way here. You can tell Friede Braun and Mitchell Lowe both getting slightly more frustrated being tucked up behind the lead Lamborghini, if you like, because they're moving around in his mirrors. They're trying to put some pressure on. They're getting twitchy. They're being aggressive. Fernholz, exactly where he wants to be, which is rent-free in their head. However, a small mistake there through Tosa allows Friede Braun to get alongside up towards Kuratella.
Yeah, Braun's got the overlap. There's a bit of contact between the two, but Braun is going to have the position. They're going to run side by side, and here comes Jack Mitchell Lowe back into play. So they head towards Aqua Minerale. It's Lambo on Lambo with a Porsche waiting in the wings. They're going to run side by side all the way through Aqua Minerale. Braun forced to the outside, and Fernholz hangs on. Braun being very, very generous with the room left on the outside of Paratella before Aqua Minerale, but unfortunately then hasn't been able to capitalise. It's great, clean racing between the two of them. Mitchell Lowe, as you say, waiting there behind in the Porsche to make a move, but it's Fernholz, Braun, Mitchell Lowe. They come out of here as they came into it, but it was great stuff to watch.
Keeping us on our toes in the commentary box, let's put it that way. It's definitely not been a boring race for the most part with these guys. They've kept it interesting in this battle three-way fight. Altenberg, he's off, he's doing his own thing. The other thing as well is if Friede Braun and Mitchell Lowe, if they know they've already taken their pit stop penalty, if you like, by taking tyres in this race, and they know Daltonberg needs to do it as well, they're feeling frustrated. So Friede Braun wants to go through. He wants to get this move done as quickly as possible, boxes in Fernholz with the Porsche. Very cleverly done there from Friede Braun to take 2nd position, and now to get after Daltonberg, because again, they know Daltonberg effectively probably needs to take tyres in this race. They want to make the most of their pace advantage, and if they're losing time behind Fernholz, that's going to minimise the penalty, if you like, Daltonberg takes by swapping tyres in the pit stop. So Friede Braun now free to get on with it. Mitchell Lowe still tucked up behind Fernholz with 46 minutes to go.
Mitchell Lowe really struggling to get it stopped for Tosa, it looks like, because it was the same thing again there. Maybe going for a little bit more of a V-shaped line, carrying the speed in, but that Porsche just struggling to get stopped. And he hopefully won't be doing that too many times when he's following someone very closely. But he could also use that to his advantage, of course, Zach, by making a move down the inside of Tosa. It's a tricky place, but it's one of the few overtaking spots here at Imola. Into the Variante Alta is not really a great overtaking opportunity in these higher powered cars, maybe in an MX-5 or something like that, but in a hypercar or an LMDh, not really. I do just quickly want to mention the differences here, because we've been calling them hypercars, LMDHs. It may be a little bit confusing to some of you who may be less familiar with these categories, but just to be clear, the hypercar category is a class that contains LMHs, which are Le Mans hypercars, and LMDHs. All three of these cars, as we see Ron Fernholz pull into the pit lane, are technically LMDH cars, but they all fall into the hypercar category. So that's why we're switching between LMDHs and hypercars. It's all the same thing in this context. But it just means that all three cars are built very similarly to the same set of regulations. But of course, every car's got its own unique points, and each car is balanced to be fair in terms of the competition. So that's why you can have such great racing between three different manufacturers.
Yeah, and we've seen that through the hypercar and in the GT3s as well. No balance of performance needed for this race, where the devs will, adjust the fuel load, the power, and sometimes even the weight of each of the cars to balance things out a little bit. For the most part, it's been kept, very respectably even. And again, that's what you want. You want drivers to choose a car that's fastest for them, not the meta in terms of in terms of the race. Because, yeah, ultimately, no matter what, the meta is, the fastest car is always going to be the car you're quickest in. But you don't want to be forced into, say, the Lamborghini if it is 4/10 a lap quicker and you don't necessarily like the driving style. You want to have that choice of, okay, I like the characteristics of this car. As Fran to make his way into the pit lane. 44 minutes left to go in this race. He's doing it. He is doing it.
Yeah, I mean, he proved. I mean, I literally said earlier, I don't think it's possible to do 3 laps of fuel saving, or it's pointless. But all those net positions I was banging on about, throw the nets in the bin, because Fernholz is going to make it to the end on this fuel tank, and he is right in the mix for P2. Essentially, yes, he did lose P2 to Braun, as we saw that move happen down the inside into Tamburello with the back marker as well a few laps ago. But Fernholz is right in the mix for at least a podium, and Mitchell Lowe, after all of this, after leading the race for so long, could find himself off of the podium. Meanwhile, Renato Del Rio down the inside of Jens Tapper in the Mercedes, and I'm not sure, to be honest, if that was a defensive move from Del Rio holding on, or if that was him overtaking. I wasn't quite aware of the order of those positions beforehand, but Tapper at the moment looking racy once again on the back of Del Rio. So either way, the two of them are scrapping for P7.
Yeah, I mean, this race has had it all, really, hasn't it? I mean, we've barely had a moment to take some longer talking points and analyze things, because the moment we start getting into a groove of, okay, yeah, let's talk a bit more in detail, something like this starts going on. It's incredible that we're being treated to a race like this. Despite the rocky start, these guys have been giving it out on circuit. We want Rio versus Tapper, the fight for 7th and 8th in the GT3s. Frauenhaus back out on circuit, did understandably lose quite a bit of time as a result of that stop. But he doesn't have to do the extra one that I think a lot of other people will have to. Well, we'll wait and see, because it's very possible that the other guys, switch on to, well, one more stop left to go. You'd imagine they've only got one more stop left to go. So Frauenholz will be hoping that this offset will get him some track position. But he is very close, actually, to being a lap down. I think you do lose roughly a lap in the hypercars per pit stop, and directly behind him are the two that, well, just a moment ago, he was battling with, potentially.
Yeah, Braun's going to be very confused at this point. Hang on a minute, I thought I just got past him. Where's he come from? So this is actually, though, Zach, a battle for position. Even though right now they're a lap apart, of course, when the pit stop happens for Braun, it's going to be a battle for position. So Fernholz will do his best to hang on to this one as long as he can. I must give credit to these drivers as well. We've seen a few close calls with traffic, as Braun actually doesn't take too long at all to get around the outside of Fernholz. And to be fair to Fernholz, he lost a bit of pace there, ran onto the gravel, and instead of fighting Braun too hard, he knew he was a lap down and he just decided to let him go. I would understand in that situation if Fernholz decided to defend, because these two are in a genuine race. But fair play to the camaraderie there from Ron. And I was talking about camaraderie beforehand, really, because I haven't seen any big incidents really between the GT3s and the hypercars. Even though there's been a few close calls, everyone's being fairly sensible from what we can see, which is nice. We also have a car in the pit lane right now, which I believe is Mitchell Lowe. So this is going to be interesting. Mitchell Lowe now leaving the pits, so maybe taking the tyre stop previously. Not sure if he's taking tyres this time, but it looks like he might get out ahead of Frauenholz here as he leaves the pit lane. Zach, he's going to accelerate now. And no sign of Frauenholz, who will be making his way down the pit straight. In fact, Frauenholz hasn't even made it through the Rivazza left-handers yet. So potentially tyres for Frauenholz, no tyres for Mitchell Lowe there.
Yeah, maybe so. It just means that Frauenholz's strategy here is, well, diminished slightly. He really needed that track position if he wanted to make it work, and it still would have been a very mountainous task to keep them behind for the next 40 minutes. But as we saw just before the pit stops, doable if he can keep his composure and not make a mistake. It's not difficult to defend, but it is difficult to maintain that defensive mindset and stay true in the pressures. Victor Svensson, though, parked in the pit lane, a DSQ for the Swede. Now that almost certainly is going to be for incident limit.
Yeah, and I should just flag with Svensson as well. He was actually down in 14th before the DQ, so maybe that's penalties coming in. But he's had a nightmare, let's be real here. Svensson was in a great race for P2 earlier on and had a fantastic battle. It was great to watch, but got into an incident, ended up in the concrete wall on the pit straight, and then it went from bad to worse really for Svensson. We kept thinking he was going to charge through, but he kept getting involved in more incidents, and as Doutsenberg gets very, very close to breaking the speed limit there on the way into the pit lane, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one to see if there's any sort of repercussions. I'm not sure if he did get it slowed down or not, but he was certainly locked up and sideways as he entered pit lane, so our race leader does take to the pits. But yeah, Svensson just capping off a bad night with the DQ for whatever reason there, so he's going to live to fight another day, of course. He can take part again in the next RaceRoom special event, and get that position that he clearly has the pace to get. And a reminder, of course, to all of you that you can download RaceRoom for free on PC. You can take part in ranked races. You can build up your ranking, take part in the special events that happen once a month here on the platform, and maybe one day you can get into the top split as well and compete during these broadcasts against the likes of Frieder Braun, who we ride on board with now as he takes the lead of this race for what might be the first time.
Yeah, whether that's going to be, well, true in 40 minutes time, we'll wait and see. But yeah, Daltenberg losing a little bit of time as a result. Mitchell Lowe completely offset compared to them. Daltenberg 25, let's wait for the timing tower to refresh what the true gap is going to be. And obviously with Frieder Braun still owing us a pit stop, I believe, is it not?
Frieder Braun, yes, is owing us a pit stop because Mitchell Lowe and Frauenholtz both pitted. Braun was just ahead of those two, so we should expect that. Van der Vaart's been driving along in a good position, but I think Van der Vaart is now, in fact, Duitsenberg is now leaving the pits. And of course, remember, Duitsenberg did not take tyres in the first stop, so probably had a longer stop this time around. But Braun is still to pit, Van der Vaart's still to pit. The question I have here, though, Zach, as Duitsenberg leaves the pits, it's showing on the timing tower as around about 52, 53 seconds to Braun. He's only maybe 14 seconds ahead of Mitchell Lowe, who didn't take tyres. Braun could make this stop. If Braun does not take tyres, it could be very, very close between Braun and Duitsenberg. This is definitely not over in terms of a race win here, for sure. Speaking of, literally, as I say that, I saw the gap coming down, was wondering if something had happened to our race leader Braun, and sure enough, Braun was recovering from what looked like an incident there, and we have the BMW coming into the pit lane as well, directly behind. Not sure if that's Prinda or Van der Vaart. I think it's actually Prinda in P6. So we're going to have Van der Vaart take the lead, Braun into the pits. I think any chance that Braun may have had to actually sneak into the lead here, or at least challenge Duitsenberg for the lead, may have gone with a mistake as we cut to him, whatever happened there. But we'll just have to see how things unfold after the pit stops. Of course, we are expecting a pit stop for Van der Vaart soon, and we do have to keep an eye as to whether Duitsenberg will be back in for a drive-through. I'm sure he would have been fine, but just going to keep one eye on it because it looked pretty sketchy.
Yeah. Frieder Braun, he has to be faultless to the pace that Daltenberg has shown since getting into the lead of the race. And yeah, Van der Vaart will come into the pit lane as well. He'll almost certainly be dropping all the way off the podium, probably behind, you'd imagine, Frauenholtz, but we'll wait and see on that one. Key one is going to be whether or not Daltenberg will get through on Frieder Braun and how close that battle is going to be as they exit their way through. Frieder Braun now leaving pit lane. I think Daltenberg will comfortably find his way past. So Daltenberg will retain the lead despite the fact that he had to take tyres at his final pit stop. What the gap is truly going to be, it's a long old pit lane here at Imola. Frieder Braun feeling the pain and will be probably more looking backwards now to see if he can stay ahead of Jack Mitchell Lowe, which he comfortably has done, and will stay in second position. The gap between himself and Daltenberg probably going to start around about 12 or 13 seconds.
That just shows you, though, what could have happened if Braun hadn't had whatever incident happened there. I do think he lost maybe 7 or 8 seconds based on the timing tower at that moment we cut to him. So it could have been pretty close. It could have been 3-4 seconds in it. I don't think Duitsenberg does have any sort of penalty from pit lane, so I'll stop keeping an eye on that one because he hasn't pulled in for anything just yet. Mitchell Lowe now 4 seconds behind Braun, so still, despite everything, Braun holding on to that P2. Mitchell Lowe then in P3, but we know Mitchell Lowe's got good pace, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. Frauenholtz, of course, taking tyres this time around. Yes, he's back on strategy and on a 2-stop with everyone else, but taking tyres has dropped him way back to P4 and, more importantly, 20 seconds off the back of the Brit. So it's actually closer now between Frauenholtz in 4th and Van der Vaart, who's just made his second and final stop in the first of our BMWs. I should now take this time to check in on GT3 and give you a running order as we see Braun putting another lap on the BMW. So all the pit stops have been made now in GT3, it's fair to say. Areco leads as we expected, but it's Roth in P2, 17 seconds off the lead. Coughlin still in P3. Mackenberg's lost out in a lot of this here because you've got Roth there and the Mercedes up in P2, has jumped far ahead of everyone, maybe doing something different with the tyre strategy, or it was just a great stop. I'm not quite sure. But either way, it's worked out incredibly well for Fabian. Ferdinand Coughlin, then Roche in P4. Mackenberg down to P5 in the BMW, so dropping back through the pit stop sequence. Then you've got Samardich P6. You have Del Rio in the Audi 7th and Sven Mackenberg in P8 in the 2nd or 3rd, actually, of our Audi R8s, with Alex dropping down to 9th. Vandenberg rounding out the top 10, the Dutchman in the BMW. So we've still got a few battles in GT3 as well, very close together and not settled just yet. Norman Norms, P12, the Frenchman, just behind Jens Tapper. and then you have Kirshner 13th. And the final one of our runners at the moment, even there, Kirshner only 3 seconds off the back of Norms. So we've got battles throughout the whole field at the moment. This man, Alex Samardic, is one of the rare examples of a GT3 driver that's not in a direct battle. He's got a whopping 7-second gap back to Del Rio behind.
Yeah, very nice gap indeed as well. And Del Rio, we know, has been very punchy with his offense and defense. So Samardic in a bit of no man's land. Probably quite grateful for that, and a very respectable, P6 in the top half of the field in what has been a pretty frantic GT3 fight basically the entire run. As well, there you can see Vandenberg P10, about about 2 seconds to Alex in front for P9, but again still inside the top 10. So again, we'll be quite happy with that one. Yes, Martic P6, not bad at all. Marvin Mackenberg though, going very late into the second half of this race, pitted around about the 48-minute mark. Came out in P5, has got 6 seconds in front to Tim Roche, who is currently only 4th, but we noted had to take that drive-through penalty, which has dropped him off the podium. Has got 3.6 seconds to Coughlin in front. The podium still very much on for the Audi, make it 3 different manufacturers inside the top 3.
Yeah, Roche has the proven pace. We've seen it earlier in the race, so that could definitely be on the cards for sure. Just want to flag as well, Mitchell Lowe's dropped back a little bit from Braun. Possibly lost 3 or 4 seconds with an incident of some kind, running wide, traffic, not quite sure, but just wanted to point that one out. Currently sandwiched in between 2 BMWs that make up the bread, not the sandwich. No worries, Lewis, all good. Be careful with that one. In terms of nationalities as well, we always see a strong German contingent here on RaceRoom. Zach, we saw it in the Next Gen Cup as well. We see it very often. A lot of the top drivers on RaceRoom are German. There's a huge German community. We're even seeing it in the RaceRoom stream on the chat as well. So shout out to all of you over in Germany watching this stream and taking part in RaceRoom events. And you have to say, the Germans are doing a great job here. I mean, you've got 3 of the top 4 in the LMDh class are from Germany. You've also got 6 of the top 7 in the GT3 class being made up of Germans as well. Areco is the outlier there, the Dane in the Porsche, flying the flag greatly with a 16-second lead and 32 minutes to go in this race. But yeah, it's amazing to see so many drivers of this high a level from this one country. Obviously, Germany producing some wonderful RaceRoom talent.
Clearly, the other one as well is Hungary. I always find the Hungarians to be very quick. The likes of Benj Farkas, Mate Mikovic, just 2 of them. There are numerous others that I'm trying to slight bank on at the moment, but Hungary as well, another nation that is really well represented in RaceRoom, and as is the case for a lot of nations, it's a very big community, a very diverse community that we have on this platform. And like we said, a bit of an underdog. It's not the sim with the most budget, with the most resources, but pound for pound, one of the best you can get. Very affordable, free to play, free to try. And the other good thing as well is that before you buy a car or track, you can test it at any given point, which obviously cannot be said for every sim. You can choose. There's plenty of discounts. I mean, I've just looked on the store quickly now, and some of the big packs of content are down to very cheap, under £10, so about €12 for those in Europe, and you get the majority of the content you will ever need. So very inexpensive, very good sim as a whole. And like we said, plenty of opportunities with competitions, regular competitions, hot lap competitions, championships that are run both officially from RaceRoom, but privately. There's plenty of championships out there that offer prize money, prizes. They get partnerships from sponsorships, and of course getting yourself on the main stage in terms of the ranked events as well. There's so much scope there in RaceRoom, and currently represented very, very nicely are the Germans. That's making Braun 1 and 2, Roth and Coughlin making it 2 and 3 in GT3 as well. And well, fair enough. There's a lot of them, so probability would probably dictate that you'd like to think some of them would do quite well. But yeah, the talent that we've got in terms of the Germans, very, very good. And most notably for me, the Mackenberg brothers. They've been around forever. They've raced in everything and have done well in everything as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. And as you alluded to there, it's easy to jump on and give the ranked racing a go. There are very enjoyable races going on all the time on RaceRoom. The combinations change every week, and there's a mixture of free content and also, of course, plenty of paid options as well that you can test, as Zach alluded to. Most recently, actually, there was an update which brought along a free Alpine A110 Cup car, which is great fun to drive. You could also pay for a GT4 spec version of the A110 And we had a couple of tracks as well. There was the Adria circuit, which was introduced, a very strange and eclectic circuit in Italy. The most twisty thing I've ever seen. I think there's 7 hairpins on the most modern Adria layout, but they also have the kind of classic Adria layout, which hosted the DTM and the FIA GT Championship in the early 2000s. RaceRoom, of course, known for adding in obscure and wonderful racetracks all across the world that you maybe haven't driven or seen on any other sim. And that's something I've always praised RaceRoom for, just the wacky tracks that you can drive around. Vallelunga also coming to the platform as part of the same update, as did the Next Gen Cup car. Now, we've talked, of course, about the Next Gen event that we saw earlier in the week. And Zach, you said that there are big competitions and prizes up for grabs. Well, the drivers who took part in the Next Gen Cup, and by the way, anyone could have entered it for free, take part in a leaderboard challenge. If you set a fast enough time, got into the top 10, you were part of the grid, racing against a number of real-world Next Gen Cup drivers, actually race winners and champions of that series, on the grid at the same time. And the winning driver, Lucas Muller, actually won a test drive in a real-world Next Gen Cup car later this year, which is just amazing. So anyone watching the stream, if you're talented, a fast sim racer, even if you had no talent and you're not a fast sim racer, you can still take part. You can jump on the leaderboard, give it a go, and if you prove your talent, join the races, get a good result, you can win crazy prizes like test drives in real-world race cars. And the top 3 also got some really cool OMP race gear as well. So it was a great event, great to see, and just another example of the sort of opportunities that sim racing can provide.
Yeah, and firsthand, I've experienced it in the world of RaceRoom. I noted earlier on the Rocket Racing stuff on the 4 Esports competition in the UK. It's a mouthful every time I try and say it. Don't try and say it 5 times fast as possible. But that provided the opportunity to Deegan Fairclough. Now, we talk of Lewis McGlade. The reason he's not here this evening is because he's commentating on the GB3 Championship, which gets on, and I'm going somewhere with this. Deegan Fairclough, racing on RaceRoom, won the championship on the online rounds that took place on RaceRoom. We then did a LAN event at the University of Bolton for the championship. He did back-to-back victories at Brands Hatch in Formula 4 machinery. He got a fully funded drive in British Formula 4 the next season, finished P3 in his debut season, then went on to do a record-breaking season in British F4 the following year. Did very well in GB3 last year, taking that step up. Basically, the equivalent of British F3 is the simplest way you can sort of explain it, and is now a championship contender in GB3 in 2026. So yeah, RaceRoom has afforded the opportunity. Lucas Miller, we spoke about him, won DTM Esports last year, got a test drive in a GT4 car at the Red Bull Ring as a result. I spoke to him earlier, and he's prepping for DTM Esports. That's why we've not put him on the grid today. I said, obviously, you're looking to go back-to-back. He was like, no, not really. I've proven what I need to prove. I've won the championship. I want to be a little bit less sweaty this year and actually be able to enjoy the summer, which, I thought was fair play. Because, we talk of sim racing, we talk about these opportunities, and that's all well and good. The grind you need to be on in order to be competing at this level is intense. So for Lucas Miller, he's probably quite keen, I'd imagine, to relax a little bit on that sense and not pound his way through endless laps on the sim.
Yeah, absolutely. So many great opportunities and so many talented drivers taking part in these events. Obviously, the other driver we alluded to earlier, Alessandro Ottaviani, we were hoping to see here tonight, and we did see him in qualifying, but also right at the front of that next gen race against the likes of Lucas Muller. And we've seen, another driver, Tim Heinemann, in the past, done some amazing stuff on RaceRoom and in sim racing across multiple different platforms, to be fair, and went on to forge a very successful career in the DTM ecosystem and the feeder series there as well. So yeah, great stuff. So many ties nowadays with sim racing and real racing and opportunities, and everything is just super accessible, which is awesome to see. Just checking in again on the track action. There's nothing really happening of note in the top class other than Mitchell Lowe dropping further and further back. So sorry to highlight that, Jack, but now 30 seconds off the race lead. Braun very, very safe in P2. In terms of GT3s, we've got a couple of close battles here. We've been watching Tim Roche just slowly edging away against Ferdinand Coughlin, bringing that gap down to the Porsche driver up in front. And you can see now it's just below a second. So Tim Roche, once again, showing that pace that we know he's got in the Audi and reeling in Coughlin. Of course, the issue for Coughlin's going to be that if Roche catches him, we've just seen so many times in this race, Zach, how fast that Audi R8 is in a straight line. So it's going to be very challenging for the Porsche, which generally speaking is a traction focused car. It's a car that's quick out of the corners, not necessarily a straight line beast. It's going to be tough for him to defend.
It is, yeah. I mean, yeah, the Porsche is pretty decent, like you say, in terms of getting the power down, but also the Audi's engine placement allows it to be pretty decent through the mid-speed corners as well. So Tim Roche has got the advantage through two sectors there, effectively straight line speed and mid corner, which is, it allows him to get close through the corner. He can get the power down coming out of it, and he's got the top end speed to drive past when he gets there. Couple that with the slipstream, which has proven to be fairly strong here at Imola. Yeah, Tim Roche is looking very, very good. This gap has been chipped down over the last few laps, but he is definitely eyeing up that podium. He's got 24 minutes left to do it as well. So unless he's got his eyes set on Fabian Roth for finishing second in this race and want to dispatch of the Mahindra livery Porsche as quickly as possible to try and chase after that, if his eyes are, for now mostly set on P3, he's got time to do this. He can take his time. He doesn't have to risk it. He's already done a lot of the heavy lifting in the comeback drive itself. He can now latch onto the back of the Porsche, take his time with it, and not worry too much about having to take too many risks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Mackenberg, of course, will be just keeping an eye on these two. He's not far behind, but it's still 4 seconds. So it's enough for Roche to think his way through this move. But Mackenberg, of course, will have the hammer down. You can see that blue BMW in the background there, as we also have the LMDhs coming through now. So that's Mitchell Lowe lapping these cars once again. 5 laps now between the leader in Hypercar and the leader in GT3. So this will be around about the 5th time that these two will be coming through. Now, Mitchell Lowe followed by Prinda, who I believe is still at the back of the Hypercar class, so maybe a lap down himself from Mitchell Lowe, but gets through no problem. It's going to hold up Coughlin just a little, but to be fair, it could have been a lot worse as the BMW drives across the gravel trap, not quite making the apex there for Variante Alta and bailing, which is the safe thing to do. But yeah, both Hypercars got past both GT3s there without too much time loss. However, Roche right on the back of Ferdinand Coughlin, and this feels somewhat inevitable that he's going to have a move here down the pit straight. So let's just right on board with the Audi now as he gets the acceleration out of the corner. It's a pretty reasonable exit for both of them, we have to say. So this is going to be very close. I reckon they're going to be side by side into the Tamburello chicane.
Well, only time will tell. I think he's got a good run here as Tim Roche is he's closing the gap. Look at that exponential as he gets closer. The space opens up on the inside through the kink towards turn number 2 at the Tamburello chicane. Around the outside goes the Porsche, tries to keep his fit in, but inevitably Tim Roche will edge his way to the outside of the circuit, will take third place. Now with 22 minutes and 19 seconds left on the clock. 5 seconds to Fabian Roth, is it doable?
I'm going to say no. But I mean, normally what I say doesn't actually result in what happens. So yeah, let's bring it on. We'll see if we can see a battle here between Tim Roche and Fabian Roth in the yellow Mercedes. Yeah, Roche has more pace throughout the event. It's been proven to a degree, but saying that, I mean, Roth's only 17 seconds off Oreco in the lead. So clearly Roth's not lacking pace, has maybe just been in a train and exploiting the strategy with some fuel saving to make a shorter pit stop. So I think Roth's probably got it. But 21 minutes is not nothing, Zach. 21 minutes is still, what's that? Quick maths. What, 13, 14 laps in these cars? Something like that. Maybe a few less. You've also got the final lap to consider as well. So, yeah, absolutely possible. 5-second gap. Maybe looking at around about 4/10 a lap, something like that. Yeah. But then you've got to make the move as well. The one thing that Roche has in his armory is the straight line speed of the Audi, which I've been banging on about. It just makes overtaking so much easier. If your car is exactly the same speed over a full lap as your competitor, so sometimes people will ask, okay, do you want a car that goes better through the corners or better on the straight? And in qualifying, it doesn't matter. If the final lap time's the same, have a car that it doesn't matter where the car's strong and where it's weak. But in a race, it's far better to have a car that's strong in the straights and slow in the corners, even if it's less enjoyable to drive, even if it's doesn't look as spectacular, you can't pull off spectacular moves in traffic. Having that straight line speed makes it easy to make the move when you should be able to make the most of the gains that you have, because on a straight, of course, the track's wide, you can take advantage of your speed gains. If you're faster in the corner, you have to have a clean line and a clean run to be able to take advantage of that speed gain. So if you're right behind someone on a corner, you can't necessarily use the speed you have. If you're behind someone on a straight, you can pull out, drive past, and use that space. So it's always better to have a straight line beast than a car that's rapid through the corners. And maybe that's just my years of racing an MX-5 against BMWs and always getting annoyed at them accelerating and making excuses for myself speaking there. But I genuinely believe it's true.
I stand that. I think that's one of the top 10 quotes of all time. 100%.
Top 15, maybe?
7, maybe, yeah, we'll see. I do agree, though. I think it is awful to drive. I do like a car that's good through the corners. We were talking about our driving styles earlier, and being on the nose is good, and typically when you've got a car that's quick in the straights, it's either awful under braking because it's squirming because the rear end is not planted, or it just doesn't turn. And at a circuit like Imola, having a car that doesn't turn is suboptimal because it also means your margin for error is a lot slimmer. If you've got a car that's very good on the front and you turn in at the wrong point, you turn in a bit late, you can almost get away with it in this, because the car will drag itself around. But if you get it wrong in a car that's really understeer, you turn in too late, you're just going to wash wide. You're going to go offline and you're going to lose a heap of time just like that. It is a very difficult window to drive into when you've got well, you shouldn't be driving into windows anyway, but a difficult window to drive in, I should say, because one small mistake, one small error, one tiny discrepancy, and you lose quite a lot of time. But the trade-off, like we say, the raceability of a car like that is incredible. You very rightly said, you can't overtake on an apex. It's just impossible. You can overtake on a straight, going into a corner, drop that straight line speed. It does make it that much easier. And equally, it means that you are so much more annoying to be overtaken from behind as well. It makes defending so much easier, provided you can keep the car under wraps, get the exits and get the entries that you need to actually be able to properly utilize the straight line speed. As is Marvin Mackenberg on the back of Ferdinand Coughlin already. Mackenberg, of course, going for the fuel-saving strategy, now in full push for the second stint of the race.
Maybe Roche is going to have to keep looking backwards rather than forwards, so we'll keep an eye on that for sure. And a great view out the back of Ferdinand Coughlin's car. We saw a perfect example of it as well with Svensson and Roche earlier. That incident that we saw on the pit straight, or the not straight pit straight, was prime example of Svensson going, hang on, this Audi I'm up against is so fast in a straight line, I have to try and block, I have to try and take advantage. And maybe the bit of frustration caused the block that came too late and ultimately cost Svensson a good result here today. So it's playing out in front of us as the BMW goes through. So that will have been one of our hypercars in 5th or 6th there, not sure which one because they have the same livery. But the BMW of Mackenberg obviously closed this gap down fairly quickly to Coughlin. Coughlin has been doing a great job all day, it has to be said. I think he's been P4 for pretty much the whole thing, with all the chaos unfolding around him. And the pace for Mackenberg, though, is looking very, very strong. Late to the pits, and on a bit of a comeback drive after leading this train for much of it. Now he's got to do the opposite thing, where he's coming from behind. The gap between Roth and Roche is stabilised. I don't think that's coming down at any rate that's going to be notable for a battle towards the end here. It's 4 seconds at the moment. And Roche has got a couple of seconds on Coughlin. But you never know. Let's see what Mackenberg can do, because it could still get spicy.
Yeah, don't doubt it. Mackenberg is a driver, as we've been banging on about for quite some time. He's got experience. He's got that racecraft. He's got the head on his shoulders. He knows what to do. He's raced in the T6 Motorsport Super Touring Championship, which has been taking place over the last few years. He's dealt with the franticness of touring car racing, of having cars here, there, everywhere. Racecraft is something that Marvin Mackenberg knows like the back of his hand. He knows what decisions need to be made. He knows how to deal with this sort of race situation. He's got the pace. He's probably happy to sit behind at the moment. He understandably realizes that his ceiling is maybe P4. Any more than that is going to be difficult. He knows he's got 16 and a half minutes to take his time, because it is still quite a long time. It's its own mini sprint race if you think about it like that. 16 and a half minutes is plenty of time for Mackenberg to get this move done. Doesn't need to do anything rash. He can really analyze where Coughlin is quick, where he is quick, or he can just go for a move as soon as the opportunity arises. But he's got the time to wait for those opportunities, already putting Coughlin under a bit of pressure going into Rivazza.
Let us know how you think this one's going to unfold in the comments section of the live stream. Thank you, as always, to all of you who've joined in the chat, who've been watching this race since the start. There's been some fantastic scraps throughout the field on this one. It's been pretty straightforward for Areco, but everything's been chaos behind him. And we're about to see more of it as the Porsche comes through to make it 3 wide briefly. Coughlin on the outside, you've got Mackenberg at the inside. Thankfully, the Porsche's got through unscathed. That might be our race leader as well, Doutsenberg. But it is going to be a change of positions here. And Marvin Mackenberg takes P4. Dust is kicked up from the car in front, but he gets through on Ferdinand Coughlin, who really just didn't have much to put up a fight with there. He couldn't really block to the inside either, Zach, because there was a Porsche hypercar coming through, and that could have all gone worse than it did, but it looked pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, definitely flirting on the edge of disaster for a moment, but these drivers, they're the best of the best. They know how to keep their head straight. They know how to keep their composure. They're not going to do anything silly. I think Coughlin would have rather just conceded that position, live to fight another day, because he's still in the top 5. And again, there's no points awarded for this race. So it's not the sense that he's missing out on 2 or 3 championship points as a result of finishing 4th or 5th. Ultimately, 4th or 5th, still a top 5. which is still a nice thing to come away from this from. I mean, maybe you've got the rating and the reputation and stuff, but they're already in top split. I don't think they're overly fussed about that too much, whether they finish 4th or 5th. Ultimately, it's still a great result if he can stay there between now and the end of the race, which with near on 20 seconds back to Samardzic, you would probably say the top 5 is pretty safe in where they are. A bit further back though, a nice little bit of a battle between Norman Norms and Kasha, the Porsche, and the German. He had a bit of an issue earlier on in the race. Contact with Svensson, now trying to fire one back down the inside and draw side by side with the Frenchman. The two Porsches, a drag race towards the Tamburello chicane.
Yeah, great to watch. One with the lights on, one without, but Kirshner gets the move done on Norman Norms and moves up into P12. Long way to go to catch Tapper in front, so that's probably going to be it for those two. There is a battle, of course, still to be had up ahead as our overall race leader now makes his way through these cars. So wherever we look in the field, Zach, it looks like Doutsenberg is just making sure he's getting some airtime and passing whatever battle it is that we're having to be watching. And speaking of watching battles, you have Renato Del Rio on the back of Samardzic. So Del Rio has managed to break the gap from Mackenberg there behind and is very much on the back here of Samardzic in the Porsche. And they're going to battle this out for 30 minutes. I mean, 4/10 is basically nothing. We know how quick the Audi is. We'll not say it again. So Del Rio, who's been battling with the back end of that car throughout this race, has one more battle to take part in here. We'll see what happens as they head into the Villeneuve chicane. So the Porsche looking nice and stable in the first part. Very, very tricky corner there to get right. 3 different apex you need to watch for, and it's so difficult to get the balance right between committing on the way in and getting your exit. It's all about a good exit from Villeneuve and being smooth on that second curb, but the speed you carry through the first one can also really help your lap time. So it's, as you can tell by the confusion I'm having trying to describe it, it's a difficult corner to get right. But it looks like these two are pretty similar to each other through here. In fact, it's a bad run out of Piratella from Samardzic, and Del Rio's going to look to the inside on the way into Aqua Minerale. This could end badly. It doesn't, because Del Rio just about backs out in time. Samardzic committed, turns into the corner, and Del Rio knew that was going to be contact, so just about got out of it. All of that stemmed from a poor exit from Samardzic originally. Let's see what happens, though, through the Variante Alta. Can the Porsche use that rear-end traction? Yes, it can. Of course, the rear-engine car, all the way at the back, always gets good acceleration out of these slow corners. But, of course, it's like the shark in Jaws. We are now coming up to the pit straight, and Renato Del Rio is driving an Audi.
I do feel very bad, or well, I'm grateful actually our production guys don't always look at our cameras when we're commentating, because the facial expressions I've been pulling at some points during this race have been brutal. That moment through Aqua Minerale was so close there, but yeah, you're right, the hunting Audi of Renato Del Rio in the slipstream and will blitz past with little resistance on the start-finish straight down the inside of the Tamburello chicane. There's just not really much that Samardzic can do by the time they reach the braking zone. Del Rio will go through, will take sixth position. The sole Italian on the, in the entire field. He also had Ottaviani to share this home race with, but Del Rio representing his country very nicely up into 6th, and you would imagine will be pulling away from Samardzic. And to be fair to Del Rio, what was it, about half an hour ago, the gap between them was about 10 seconds, because I remember saying Samardzic was in a bit of no man's land. Del Rio has done very well to close this gap. Have just looked in the Traction YouTube chat. Someone talking about Doutsenberg running out of virtual energy with 1 lap to go. I'm not even going to begin to pretend like I understand how virtual energy works or what it is or how it's going to impact this race. Maybe you'll be kind enough to explain in the YouTube chat. Maybe we can get some YouTube analysts on the Traction GT channel. Please, by the way, if you know more than we do, which is very likely you know more than we do in the YouTube chat, let us know, because it's valuable information. We appreciate your input. Doutsenberg, though, virtual energy, what do you make of that? I mean, 22.5 seconds, is it big enough for him to be under pressure for the lead?
It entirely depends. I can have a go at the virtual energy explanation, but do we have 10 minutes? We've got 10 minutes. I will, of course, jump out and interrupt myself if anything exciting happens, which inevitably will be. But yeah, just to explain, virtual energy is it's confusing because it's not fuel. It's essentially a false currency for a secondary type of fuel. Now, that's probably made it way more complicated than it needs to be. But because the cars need balance somehow, they all have different sizes of fuel tanks. They're all different pace. You need to have a sort of relatable fuel tank that is the same for everyone, so that even if your fuel tank can actually carry more physical fuel, your stints, it's unfair if you can have a stint that's way longer than someone else, because you could end up having one full less stop than a rival in a race. I'm absolutely butchering this explanation. I was trying to make it simplified, and I've gone way more difficult. So keep digging. So basically, you could still have fuel in the car, but you could run out of virtual energy. So it's a bit complicated, but you have to essentially manage both. Now, managing virtual energy is very much like managing your fuel tank. You just have to drive in a more efficient way. You have to use less fuel, and then therefore you will use less virtual energy, because it's kind of the same thing, just a fake version of it. But so where that comes into play is that with a few laps to go, there's only a certain number of laps you could possibly do in a hypercar stint, and no matter how big your fuel tank is and how much fuel you can actually put in the car, you're not going to be able to use all of that if you run out of virtual energy. So Doutsenberg, for instance, could be running it pretty close because he made a fairly early final stop. But then I don't have the information to hand as to how much virtual energy there is. I wonder if someone watching the traction stream and commenting that is watching maybe a stream from Doutsenberg to know about the, to be able to make that mathematical call on how much virtual energy is remaining. I'm not quite sure. But we'll have to keep an eye on it, and thank you for flagging it. It is Dumrick that's flagged that, so very much appreciated, and we will keep an eye on it because it keeps it exciting if you don't know what's going to happen for the lead of the race. Doutsenberg, though, has a 23-second gap, so he can start to try and lift and coast a bit and save on that virtual energy, save on that fuel. Also had a comment from Alexander Grunwald in the traction chat saying, Frieder Braun in P2, very nice. Great considering the limited time he's had to prepare. So there you go. And also just praising the race for being very clean and not many incidents considering the track layout being Imola. And that is a very good point. I think the racing, generally speaking, today, despite a few incidents, as always, it's been very fair and clean. So great to see.
I mean, earlier on in the race in GT3s, where we had Svensson and Roche side by side for half a circuit at a time, these drivers are kept it clean. And, there is a bit of a narrative forming in sim racing. It's died off a little bit, but definitely in the recent past, there's been a bit more of a push for very elbows out racing, and especially the higher end of esports, which is if you're on the outside, you effectively don't exist. Which I can kind of see in the sense that, take karting, for example. If you're on the outside, it's not necessarily that you're not entitled to space, more so that you should be expected to be pushed off, because that's just how racing lines work. A car on the inside will naturally, as it starts accelerating, the inertia will pull it to the outside of the circuit. If you're on the outside, fair enough, you might be entitled to room. Realistically, how much of it are you actually going to get? It's a different story. So putting yourself on the outside, and then when you get pushed off, throwing a bit of a hissy fit, kind of sort of go hand in hand. But ultimately, by the rulebook, if you're on the outside, you're alongside, you should be given room. And I think it does look a lot better when you've got cars running side by side. So it has been really refreshing to see that drivers haven't taken that mentality of, well, I've gotten to the apex first, you should be expected to be pushed off, I'm just going to open up the steering and drive you off the track. That's not what we've seen in the slightest. They've kept it really, really clean, and even at the expense of losing a position. I mean, Tim Roche lost out to Victor Svensson on a couple of occasions. That Audi versus BMW battle was very interesting. So, yeah, good to see that we've got that. Also good to see that Renato Del Rio hasn't completely ran away from Alex Samardzic. Now, I don't know how much of this is alluding back to what John was saying earlier in the case of just being latched onto the back of the car, not really being quicker than them per se. It's down the inside, actually, will go to Samardzic. So that's completely ripped that one up. Nice to see these two are still battling for 6th and 7th.
I don't know what happened there. It looked a bit strange from Del Rio's perspective. It was almost as if he let him go, and he's now kind of, dropping back in. Was it just a mistake under braking? These cars have ABS. I would be surprised. But Del Rio very much opening the door there for the Porsche. Maybe trying to avoid a spin with rearward brake bias, for instance, something like that. You've got this Audi has been very, very difficult into the slow corners. It's been a little bit sketchy, so potentially just a little bit of a loss of control there on the way in from Del Rio. But either way, the position goes back to Samardzic and the battle will resume. I am also keeping an eye on Roth versus Roche. I said it was over, and I knew that by saying that, it wouldn't be over. And sure enough, the gap's smaller. Okay, it's still, 2.5 seconds between the two of them, but it was 4 seconds earlier on. So with 5.5 minutes to go, a bit more traffic at play, could still be a battle for P2 in this race. And Mackenberg, as we said, is continuing to just slightly reel in on Roche.
Yeah, if there is a battle between Roth and Roche, that's not going to get confusing to say if they do start
It's too late in the race.
Oh my goodness.
Oh no, I'm dead. I'm done.
It's not looking good. Mackenberg, if they do start battling, will just close straight back in down the inside as well. A battle.
I think that's Roth, actually.
Yeah, that is Roth getting through some lap traffic, I think, pushing after. Well, trying to stay in front of Roche. You can see the back Audi just closing in onto Norman Norms, actually, who himself is trying to get onto the back of Tommy Kirshner. Yeah, so we are seeing this gap in real time, really, starting to close. So 2.2 seconds between them. What is it going to be? 3-4 laps at the line. It depends on what Dautzenberg is doing in terms of when he crosses the line to start the final lap. But yeah, like I said, Roth and Roche, if they start battling, Mackenberg is straight involved in it and could be a contender. Don't count him out just yet. It is going to be a tough ask and completely dependent on whether or not Roche can close up onto the back and pressurize Roth. But all things go well for us as commentators, we could have a three-way fight for second with probably half a lap left to go maximum.
Yeah. And now that we've said that, it's not going to happen. So I'm going to say that it's not going to happen so that it happens. There we go. But yes.
Sense.
Yeah. 4 minutes to go. We're hanging on. We're hanging on by a thread. Mackenberg, 22.5 seconds off the lead then. But as you say, 1.5 off of Roche. You could see it closing in from the battle we were watching between Kirshner and Norms. So great visualization there. It's all going to depend on the hypercars as well, if they hold these GT3s up when lapping, but there are only 6 of them. So it's a little bit more unlikely that traffic will come into play at this very late stage than it might have been in an alternative universe. So all we can do is keep an eye on the gaps. But of course, with this little time to go in a race as well, Zach, you are as a driver feeling the pressure. You know, at this point, if you know there's someone closing you down and they're maybe a little bit faster, it does add an element of difficulty to the end of your race, because do you push 100% to try and, you know, stem that gap, or do you slow it down to try and avoid making a mistake? It's not that simple. So we'll just have to see what happens. But these are very experienced names. I mean, Roth, Roche, Mackenberg, Coughlin, these are all names we've seen in multiple special events before. They are at the top of their game on RaceRoom, so I also wouldn't be surprised if they're very calm under pressure. But we have seen these drivers make mistakes in the past too, so there's not really much more to be said. However, Areco out in front, still 19-second lead. I still haven't seen a gap change dramatically to Areco, so the point I was trying to make was, despite all the chaos behind, all the uncertainty, this man has just held his gap, slowly chipped away. When other people have made mistakes, he's not. And now he's looking at a 19-second lead with 2.5 minutes to go. And it will be a flawless victory for the Dane.
I mean, yeah, he has just been so good. It's not been that he's, you know, he's not been crazy quick, right? He's not been an alien relative to everyone else. He's been quicker, absolutely. But it's just been little and often, right? He's just been so consistent. The gap isn't as big as it is because Areco is 2 seconds a lap quicker. The gap is as big as it is because Areco is a 1/10.5, 2/10 a lap quicker every single lap, almost without fail. He did get done quite a few favours early doors when, you know, people were squabbling for second, third, fourth, and fifth on the opening lap as if it was the final lap, and, you know, that allowed him to build a gap, get into a rhythm, find his feet, not really feel too much pressure, you know, all those sort of things. But he made that position for himself because he put the quickest qualifying time in of those that were still in the session by the time the race started. He then drove away, got the start that he needed to, and hasn't put wrong stint. Nico Areco very comfortably has been head and shoulders above the rest of the field. He's did the work on strategy, he's got the consistency, and like I say, hasn't once been phased by anything. And that is an incredible quality to have as a driver. Meanwhile, everything has just been effectively blowing up in GT3.
Well, Del Rio, I saw, got passed by Mackenberg there and has dropped 6 seconds behind Samardich. I wonder, Zach, if Renato Del Rio is running out of fuel and is saving desperately to try and make it to the end of this race. I might be wrong. Maybe it was a mistake, but the way that he let Samardich go quite easily told me that was a man who wasn't really fighting for that position. He was fighting to make it to the end. Now, I might be wrong, but we'll see if he drops further behind Mackenberg now. He's got a 20-second gap to Alex behind, so he should be safe in P8. and we'll see if he uses that time. Of course, we've only got 40 seconds to go. One other thing I wanted to flag, and it's actually changed position now, we did have a change in the hypercar class, so the gaps were all big between everyone until they weren't. Frauenholz was about 3 seconds ahead of Van der Vaart, and that's why Frauenholz, we talked about the strategy, we talked about the nets. I think I put the net in the bin, but the net needs to come back out the bin because Frauenholz is back in the pits, and he didn't make it on 2 stops, just 1 lap shy. I don't know how that happened because he saved so well in that second stint, but unfortunately for Frauenholz, it's come to blows right at the end.
Such a shame. I think he's been caught out by this being 1 lap longer than he expected. I think in terms of time, he would have made it to the end. Like, he would have been able to get to this point now as we're ticking closer to 0 seconds. What he probably wasn't able to do was this final third of a lap. I think he's just been caught out by that ever so slightly because he comfortably did about a 47-minute stint. But nonetheless, Niels Dautzenberg didn't get the best of starts, dropped back in the pack, and for a moment you thought that maybe he'd lost it. He's got 2 corners left to go to take a very dominant victory in this race.
Yeah, he wasn't the name on my lips during the qualifying session until he jumped up to third. I went, oh, okay, maybe this is the one person that could challenge the front two. But then when things changed at the start of the race, suddenly Dautzenberg found himself as one of the favourites. Yes, it was a bad start. Yes, he dropped back a few positions, but he kept his head down, kept on focusing, and eventually found his way back to the front of the field. And it is going to be a first special event victory of the year in the top split for Niels Dautzenberg, who crosses the line in the Penske Porsche 963. Well-deserved victory, 25 seconds in the end, ahead of closest challenger Braun, and a great effort from the German to take the win here at Imola. He kept himself calm under difficult circumstances and thoroughly deserved this win. As we now cut to Braun heading for P2. I did notice Del Rio dropping further down, so I think Del Rio has run out of fuel now, dropping down to P11, so it's a disaster for the Audi driver, but Frieder Braun comes across to take Lamborghini's best result in this race, P2 for the SC63, and another German 1-2. Mitchell Lowe sitting in third place. It's not been a great race for Mitchell Lowe. In fact, actually, before we talk about that, is that Mackenberg in the pits? Has Mackenberg finished? I'm going to guess he's finished. Let's not get too excited, but he's definitely in the pits at the moment. It looked like the car was parked so that it finished the race. But yeah, it's going to be Dautzenberg from Braun, Mitchell Lowe picking up a podium after a very eventful race, coming to the line very shortly, and then Van der Vaart, Frauenholz, and Prinda. And in GT3, of course, Areco takes the win from Roth, who hangs on from Roche. Looks like Areco and Roth managed to get that extra lap in when Roche, Mackenberg, and the rest didn't.
Yeah, I think so. So Areco's dominance really helping out Roth there. The battle raging on, though, still between Van der Berg and Jens Tapper. Defensive goes the BMW in towards Ravazza for the final time. And the Mercedes will try and get the exit if he possibly can, but 2 front-engine cars, they should be pretty equal. It was a good effort from Tapper, but an equally good defense from the Dutchman, who will come across the line to take 9th position. But what a drive that was up in front from Areco. What a drive it was at the overall in the hypercars with Dautzenberg. No doubts about it that he was going to take victory by about, 27 seconds?
I saw you prepping that one a long time ago.
Thank you.
Well done.
I've had that in my head for about an hour. About an hour. I've had
hoping that he'll win. Yeah, but no, it was there was no doubt from about. Well, there was plenty of doubts throughout that race, so I'm not even going to give you that one. But yeah, towards the end of the race, absolutely things settled down, and he thoroughly deserved the victory. And great to give some more screen time to this man, Nico Areco, who's absolutely smashed it in GT3 and takes his first special event top class win of the season. There's your podium in LMDh. There is your podium in GT3, and I have thoroughly enjoyed myself today. Yes, we had a few issues with the server, which meant a smaller grid than we were hoping for in Split 1, which was a shame to see. And given the nature of this tight and twisty Imola circuit, you might worry that we wouldn't see as much action. But wow, were we given an exciting race to watch there, Zach? Especially, I would say, in GT3, we saw some phenomenal battles. A great train running back from P2. It got very feisty early on, but even after that had sorted itself out, we saw more battles. And also, obviously, great three-way scraps in LMDh as well. So it was looking a bit scary for a moment, but we had some great racing nonetheless.
Yeah, I think so. And again, a big testament to the drivers for jumping in, getting on with it. You know, the situation as a whole wasn't ideal, but they kept their composure, they kept their cool, and they still deliver us a really good race. I mean, the first half an hour in GT3, where we had 6 to 8 car trains, was incredible. The way that they kept it respectful at the front end of the field. And, you know, we had domination. We didn't have much of a battle for the lead, but that's also something that you can really appreciate, right? Why were they so dominant? What set them apart from the rest of the field? For Areco, it was just his sheer consistency. For Dautzenberg, it was his composure in the early phase of that race to come back through the field and then to just run away with it in the front. A bit of unknown in terms of strategy, and he nailed it and did exactly what he needed to at every different hurdle that he faced. And in the end, we had two very deserved, very dominant victors, but nothing can be taken away from the fact that that was a very nice race indeed.
13 splits running all at the same time as well. So we hope that any of you watching this that took part in any of those splits had a great race tonight, had some enjoyable racing. And I think based on what we saw in split 1, I imagine there were plenty of great battles throughout the entire field. We will, of course, be back again soon for another RaceRoom special event. Hopefully you guys watching this have enjoyed this one. So don't forget to subscribe to the RaceRoom YouTube channel and the Traction YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of the RaceRoom special event streams in the future. But that's going to be it for myself, John Monroe, and Zach Sweeney tonight. We hope you have a good night, and we'll see you again very soon.